Chapter 4:15. Universe Island was a medium-sized island, but its geographical location was extremely special. In the North Sea, Universe Island was at the very center. Among the numerous islands of various sizes in the North Sea, Universe Island was like a chess piece on the celestial position on a chessboard. Universe Island's geographical location was special, and its name was not bad. However, it was originally an extremely barren medium-sized island. There was not even a small spirit vein within a radius of 100 or so kilometers. Spirit ores, spirit materials, and the like were even more lacking. However, the sects of the North Sea ultimately valued the location of this island. The 10 great sects took the lead and each took out a small spirit vein, forming a medium-sized spirit vein that was drawn to the center of Universe Island. Then, they built pavilions and pavilions on Universe Island. Universe Island became the place where the sects of the North Sea discussed matters of the North Sea and coordinated their relationships. Due to the nourishment of the spirit vein, its special geographical location, and the fact that the sects of the North Sea often quarreled with each other over various matters, Universe Island became more and more prosperous in the North Sea. The 10 great sects each divided up their sphere of influence on Universe Island, occupying the majority of the island. The remaining areas were divided among the other powerful sects and clans of the North Sea. Over time, Universe Island became a neutral zone in the North Sea. Whenever there was a gathering between the various sects, as long as it was not proposed by a single sect, most of them would choose to hold it on Universe Island. On this particular day, 2 cultivators, one old and one young, walked out from the teleportation array on Universe Island. After the 2 of them walked out from the teleportation array, the young cultivator followed behind the old cultivator as they walked towards a palace in the center of Universe Island. This palace was built by Zhenling on Universe Island. When Lu Ping followed Fornax Laozu to the entrance of the palace, 3 large words Snow Mist Palace were written on the wide inscribed board. Fornax Laozu paused at the entrance and said, "The other Laozu of our sect who is guarding Universe Island is Tian Shui Laozu of this Snow Mist Palace. You should also know that after meeting senior sister Tian Shui, you should not speak too much. Just listen. Senior sister Tian Shui has a strict personality and her words are sharp." Back then, Tianlin and Tianling, the 2 martial nephews, were lawless and out of control, and were always disciplined by senior sister Tian Shui. You are the disciple of Tianling, so after meeting her, you should also be careful with your words. Lu Ping's expression was very strange, but he still nodded his head. Tian Shui Laozu was one of the 3 mid-Dharma Laozu of Zhenling. She was one of the 2 experts that their sect relied on to fight against Xianling sect's Dao Sheng Laozu. How would Lu Ping dare to offend this old woman? Now, he was afraid that this Laozu would make things difficult for him because of his teacher, who asked him to be a junior, and a junior with low strength at that. If his teacher was here, even if Tian Shui Laozu did not have a good expression on her face, she would at most make a few sarcastic remarks and not make things difficult for him. However, if it was Lu Ping, it might not be the case. After all, he was someone from the same generation as her disciple. How could Tian Shui Laozu possibly put down her face to make things difficult for him? However, this was also hard to say. It was common for these experts to do strange things. Who could say for sure? Lu Ping was worried about his personal gains and losses. After taking a few steps into the Snow Mist Palace, his mind was already spinning with many thoughts. Tian Shui Laozu looked to be in her 40s. She was still a stunning beauty that still retained some of her charm. However, compared to her teacher who was dressed in palace attire and had a graceful and elegant image, Tian Shui Laozu was dressed in a capable and experienced attire. It was obvious that she had a straightforward character. However, it was unknown why Tianlu Laozu described her as old-fashioned and strict. Tianlu Laozu stepped forward and smiled. "It's been a few years since we last met. How have you been, senior sister? What's good about it?" The moment Tian Shui Laozu opened her mouth, she became very angry. "On this Huanyu Island, I've been arguing with a bunch of smelly and shameless people every day. I'm so angry that I could die. Unlike you guys, all of you are hiding in Tianling Mountain, saying that you're guarding the sect. There's even one that's even worse. He directly went to the Eastern Sea to look for scenic spots, leaving me, a weak girl, on this Huanyu island with no one to care about me. This Junling man is really something. Lu Ping lowered his head. Even with his mid-stage core forging realm cultivation, he couldn't help but laugh at Tian Shuelaozu's words. Tianlu Laozu seemed to have already gotten used to Tian Shuelaozu's way of speaking. He laughed dryly. Senior sister is the pillar of our sect. This Huanyu island is, after all, the place where the alliance of the Northern Seas sects is located. Senior sister's presence here is where our sect's confidence lies. If senior sister were to throw away her responsibilities, wouldn't this Huanyu island become Shenling sect's Daoyang's word? He dares. Tian Shuelaozu's eyebrows shot up as she spat out a few words. I'll beat him to death. That's right. Tianlu Laozu no longer had a trace of his sect's prestige as the sect's Laozu. His mouth was full of flattery as he said, don't you see what kind of person senior sister is? She's our sect's third, no, second expert. Suppressing a Shenling sect's mid-stage Dharma cultivator is just a piece of cake. Lu Ping could clearly see that when Tianlu Laozu said third, Tian Shuelaozu's eyebrows furrowed. Tianlu Laozu immediately said second. Only then did Tian Shuelaozu let out a light snort and let him finish his sentence. Tian Shuelaozu waved her hand impatiently and said, cut the crap. This time, it's the Northern Seas alchemist gathering, right? The lowest requirement there is to be an alchemist master. You've brought such a young lad this time. Don't tell me he's the disciple of that crazy lass from Tianling? The one who's been in the limelight recently, water sword deity? Lu Ping sighed in his heart. Perhaps this Laozu was the most unscrupulous person in the sect. However, it was no wonder. The person in front of him was one of the 3 mid-stage Dharma cultivators in the sect. In the sect, she could naturally do whatever she wanted. As long as it wasn't a traitor, who would dare to argue with her? Lu Ping hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Disciple Lu Ping pays his respects to Martial Grandaunt Tian Shui. Tian Shuelaozu's eyes lit up. Lu Ping felt as if a sharp knife was slicing across his body. Tian Shuelaozu had a look of surprise on her face as she said, lad, you dare to call yourself a sword deity at such a young age. Even Eugen sect's Mo Genli doesn't dare to call yourself that. I heard that you're also an alchemist. Can you take care of both? Eugen sect was the only major sword cultivator sect in the Northern Sea. Mo Genli was a mid-stage Dharma cultivator from Eugen sect, Laozu. Lu Ping obeyed Tianlu Laozu's instructions and replied, disciple will do his best. Tian Shuelaozu laughed coldly, lad, it's not that easy to enter the Northern Sea Alchemist Master Gathering, especially for someone as young as you. Others have worked hard for hundreds of years to achieve this. You only took 30 to 50 years to achieve this. Do you think others will let you off so easily? Even with Tianlu's recommendation, others will still make things difficult for you. Tianlu Laozu's expression turned grave as he said, why? Did senior apprentice sister hear some news? In the past, when there were new alchemists, as long as someone recommended them, they wouldn't make things difficult for them. But this time, someone actually dares to make things difficult for me, Zhenling? Tian Shuelaozu glared at him and said, other than Shenling sect, who else dares to challenge our sect? Isn't this all because of that last Shenqin back then? Tianlu Laozu's expression changed as he said, Wei Shuren, that fellow is here? Tian Shuelaozu sighed and said, not only is he here, that fellow has already become Shenling sect's second alchemist master. This time, that old bastard is here to show off to the various sects in the Northern Sea. If Shenqin was here, she would naturally suppress him. But this little fellow, Chemph. Lu Ping directly ignored Tian Shuelaozu's disdainful expression. When that Wei Shuren was in the 4th layer core forging realm, he might not have had Lu Ping's current alchemy skills. However, the crucial point now was not cultivation, but alchemy skills. Tianlu Laozu helplessly looked at Lu Ping and said, this is also Xuanqin's fault. That year, when Wei Shuren challenged her, not only did Shenqin win, she even ruthlessly ridiculed him, causing an alchemist master to vomit blood and faint. She lost all her face. Now that the other party is seeking revenge, it is expected. Tian Shuelaozu pointed at Tianlu Laozu and said, what kind of teacher are you? That year, That Wei Shuren provoked Shen Qin with his words. That last Shen Qin only gave him a taste of his own medicine. What's wrong with that? On the contrary, you, as her teacher, didn't protect Shen Qin because of those two bastards Tianlin and Tianling, allowing that last Shen Qin to leave in a fit of anger. That's wrong. Tianlu Laozu smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. Lu Ping quietly stood behind Tianlu Laozu with his head lowered. No one knew what he was thinking. Tian Shui Laozu glanced at Lu Ping. He knew that Tianlu Laozu wasn't willing to mention what happened in the past in front of a junior. Thus, he coldly snorted and said, "Brat, it seems like you're also a talent. Sooner or later, you'll know about this. Although you're that crazy last Tianling's disciple, you don't have to be afraid that I, Laozu, will make things difficult for a junior like you." However, Tian Shui Laozu suddenly said sternly, "Brat, if you throw our sect's face in the alchemist assembly, don't blame me, Laozu, for using this as an excuse to send you to the seabed to mine ores for 5 years." Lu Ping suddenly raised his head and looked at Tian Shui Laozu with bright eyes. "If this disciple didn't throw our sect's face, shouldn't Laozu give me some benefits as a reward?" Tian Shui Laozu and Tianlu Laozu looked at this extremely daring brat in front of them in shock. He was actually so calm and unruffled in front of Fa Xiong Laozu. Tian Shui Laozu was so angry that he laughed. "If you didn't throw our sect's face, that's what you ought to do. Don't tell me you're thinking of using our sect's honor to threaten me, Laozu." Lu Ping cursed inwardly as an old fox. He grew up in Zhenling. To put it bluntly, Zhenling was his home. How could Lu Ping allow Zhenling to throw their sect's face in front of other sects just because there were no benefits? However, Lu Ping's spirit was shaken. This was the second time Tian Shui Laozu spoke in such a long tone. As expected, Tian Shui Laozu continued, "If you can obtain the 5 years lifespan pill formula in the alchemist assembly, even if you lose face, I, Laozu, will reward you with something. If you don't lose face and obtain the lifespan pill formula, I, Laozu, will let you pick 3 items from my collection. Deal?" Lu Ping's words caused Tianlu Laozu's expression to turn weird. Tian Shui Laozu, on the other hand, was laughing coldly. Lu Ping didn't care about all these. The reason why he went against Tian Shui Laozu was because he was angry that Tian Shui Laozu kept calling his master crazy lass. Furthermore, Tian Shui Laozu was obviously standing on Shen Qin Laozu's side. Although Lu Ping wasn't sure what exactly happened back then, he could guess that the reason why his master and grandmaster had a falling out was most likely because of this martial art Shen Qin. However, after hearing Tian Shui Laozu's words, Lu Ping was overjoyed. Currently, he had a 5 years lifespan pill formula in his hand. He even had a 10 years lifespan pill formula. He was already in an invincible position. Of course, the 10 years lifespan pill formula was too shocking in the Northern Sea. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't take it out easily. Chapter 416. The North Sea Alchemists' Gathering was held in the North Sea Palace on Huanyu Island. It was a magnificent palace. Lu Ping followed Fornax Laozu to the North Sea Palace. Along the way, Lu Ping had already heard a lot about the entrance test from Laozu. The alchemy world had strict rules. Anyone who became an alchemy master had to be recognized by the cultivation world in advance. This couldn't be faked. However, this North Sea Alchemy Master Gathering was a spontaneous event. Although it was led by the top 10 sects, the participants were alchemy masters from all over the North Sea. The North Sea was vast, so it was impossible for all the alchemy masters to come every time. It was also impossible for every alchemy master to know each other and know each other's abilities. Therefore, there was an entrance test. However, it was just a formality. As long as they recognized each other's abilities, it would be fine. Naturally, no one would dare to offend an alchemy master. However, if one really ran into an enemy during the entrance test, then one could only blame oneself for not being strong enough. However, if he really ran into an enemy at the entrance and was blocked by the entrance test, then he could only blame himself for not being strong enough. This kind of thing had happened in the North Sea before. 150 years ago, Zhenling sect's enlightened Shen Qin became an alchemy grandmaster and followed the Forsaken Grandmaster to the North Sea Alchemy Gathering. Xianling sect's alchemy grandmaster, Wei Shuren, tried his best to stop them, but unexpectedly, he was the one who made a mess and enlightened Shenqin barged in. 50 years later, enlightened Shenqin turned around and blocked Wei Shuren outside the North Sea Palace. Another 20 years later, enlightened Shenqin once again participated in the North Sea Palace and Wei Shuren was blocked again. 60 years ago, enlightened Shenqin attended the North Sea Palace for the last time. Wei Shuren once again rushed to the North Sea Palace and saw enlightened Shenqin sneering at him from afar. Lu Ping followed enlightened Tianlu to the North Sea Palace. Before he entered, he heard a voice coming from the palace. Zhenling brought a newcomer this time. Tianlu, is this little guy an alchemy master? Could he be one of your juniors? The rules of the North Sea alchemy master can't be broken. Don't think about favoritism. Haha, there's a good show. Look, old Wei's eyes aren't right. There was surprise, ridicule, and mockery in his voice. However, Fornax Laozu acted as if he had nothing to do with this matter. He walked into the palace without saying a word. Lu Ping was about to step in when he heard a voice say, "Kid, don't go in yet." Lu Ping's expression did not change as he continued to walk inside. A belt of fire was already rushing towards him from the left side of the palace. Lu Ping did not stop and continued to take another step forward. At this time, he was only 6 steps away from the threshold. Heaven and earth mysterious flame? Lu Ping smiled and flicked his finger. The 7 treasures gored in his heart core spouted out a bright yellow flame. The flame flowed along Lu Ping's finger and turned into a rope of fire that shot towards the tongue of fire. Lu Ping's eyes widened in surprise as he looked at the tongue of fire. Hihi, not bad. Old man, come and have a try. As soon as he finished speaking, a flame burned towards him. It was another rare fire. However, this flame was different from the previous tongue of flame. Every time it jumped, there would be an explosion in the air. Lu Ping squinted his eyes. A black flame flew out from the thumb-sized golden house hanging on his neck. It was like a burning black curtain that rushed towards the exploding flame. Fortunately, he had caught Lu Qin this time. Because Tianling Laozu was guarding the spirit mine on Frost Island and Tianlin Laozu was guarding Huangli Island, Jiang Xianxian suddenly became a child without her parents. Lu Ping was not worried that someone would plot against his little junior sister, but he was worried that someone would plot against him through Lu Qin. Therefore, he could only bring his little junior sister to Huangli Island and let Tianlin Laozu have a headache over his daughter. Lu Qin was brought here by Lu Ping. This time, he could use the dark prison poisonous fire of the ice and fire rings to fight against the enemy. Dark prison poisonous fire, the cultivators in the palace exclaimed. The exploding flame suddenly stopped and the sound of the exploding flame became more frequent. It intertwined with the dark prison poisonous fire and fought against each other. The dark prison poisonous fire was famous among the rare fires. It was not because it was suitable for alchemy, but because it was difficult to deal with and special. First, it could only be used to make poisonous pills. Second, it could pollute the fire seed of other rare fires. One of the most frightening things in alchemy was that the fire seed was not pure. Not only would it affect the success rate, but if it was poisoned, it would become a poisonous pill. That would be a big problem. As expected, when Lu Ping's dark prison poisonous fire appeared, the second cultivator in the palace looked as if he had been hit by bad luck. He muttered to himself, "This is a big loss. Even if the fire seed is not polluted, I have to check it again just in case. I'm afraid this fire seed can't be used for another year or 2. Lu Ping took advantage of the shock of the dark prison poisonous fire and took another step forward. At this time, he was only 5 steps away from the door of North Sea Palace. The moment Lu Ping's foot touched the ground, 2 flames flew towards him. From afar, 2 waves of heat attacked him. Lu Ping looked at the 2 waves of fire and his brows tightened. One was cauldron fire, and the other was obviously a small fire-type technique. These people really resent me. Didn't I just reach this realm a few years earlier than them? Is there a need to be so jealous? Lu Ping could not help but resent them. He turned his right hand and touched his chest while performing a hand seal. A core fire flew out as well, but the core fire was faintly divided into 3 colors. It was the true Samadhi fire, minor fire, that Lu China had yet to master. However, seeing that the core fire was divided into 3 colors, it was clear that she had obtained 2 fire seeds. He heard that Lu China had been playing with little junior sister all this time, and her teacher and grandmaster had given her treasures. Could it be 2 fire seeds? Lu Ping cursed to himself. She had only been playing with little junior sister all day, and she had obtained 2 fire seeds. Even Lu Ping would be jealous of such a good thing. Lu Ping did not think that the items given by Fa Xiong Laozu would be ordinary. As for the other fire minor technique, Lu Ping cast Luan Yu's technique of combining the 3 fires on the Wutong tree into one to block the fire minor technique. Lu Ping took another step forward, and he was only 4 steps away from the door. At the spur of the moment, someone in the palace said, "Fine, the old man has made a move too, but he's bullying the young." As soon as the voice died away, a green mist flew toward the flames that were fighting Lu Ping. Fornax Laozu's snort was vaguely heard from the palace. "Emu Chi." Lu Ping cursed internally, "Which old bastard is making a move again? He'd rather spend money than let me have an easy time." The Yi Wood Chi was a wood elemental heaven and earth mysterious treasure. It had many uses, one of which was the ability to ignite the fire seed and increase the power of the fire. However, this was even more extravagant than when Luan Yu used a second-grade mutated wood elemental heaven and earth mysterious treasure to ignite the fire seed. Although it was a heaven and earth mysterious treasure, there was no point in burning it. With the help of the Yi Wood Chi, the few sparks that were entangled with Lu Ping suddenly grew stronger and surged towards him. Lu Ping's heart ached, but he could not be bothered at the moment. He touched his storage ring with his right hand, and 2 of the 8 high-grade spirit stones flew toward each of the 4 flames that he was controlling. "Explode!" Lu Ping shouted internally. The 4 flames surged after he activated the spirit explosion technique, and they resisted the flames that were helped by the Emu Chi. "Hey, this secret technique that stimulates the spiritual stone's spiritual chi is interesting. It's more than interesting. It's simply extraordinary. Fornax, when did Junling find such a technique? Are you willing to exchange it at this meeting? The old man happens to have a fire seed that he doesn't need. What do you think?" The people sitting in the palace were all North Sea alchemy grandmasters and above. Naturally, they knew about Lu Ping's spirit explosion technique. They immediately asked Fornax Laozu about it, and were even eager to exchange for this secret technique. However, Fornax Laozu refused all of them. As a Grandmaster Alchemy Forging Master, how could he not know the long-term benefits of the spirit explosion technique? A fire seed. To hell with it. Taking advantage of the power of the spirit explosion technique, Lu Ping took another step forward. At this time, he was only 3 steps away from the North Sea Palace. At this moment, a cold snort mixed with a cold intent, as if it had turned into a sharp thorn, stabbed towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping sneered. Finally couldn't help but make a move. Lu Ping was able to use the water attribute cultivation method to improve his alchemy technique to such a level. One of the biggest reasons was that his divine sense was far superior to ordinary people. At this time, Lu Ping's cultivation was only at the middle stage of core forging, but his divine sense was not inferior to that of a late-stage core forging cultivator. In fact, it was even stronger than an ordinary late-stage core forging cultivator. This time, the cultivator who attacked Lu Ping was a bit stronger than Lu Ping due to his cultivation and identity as an alchemy master. However, it was not much stronger. Lu Ping tried his best to defend, and the other party was helpless. However, as a result, Lu Ping was still a step too slow. In the North Sea Palace, a sea blue flame passed through the entanglement of several flames in the air and flew towards Lu Ping. Heaven and earth spirit fire. In the end, that person still used this method. Sea blue flame, a high-grade mystic class heaven and earth spirit fire. Lu Ping's mind moved, and the same blue flame flew out from Lu Ping's hand. Oh, this kid has a lot of good things in his hands. It seems that since Shen Qin left, Tianlu and the others have put all their effort into cultivating this kid. You even found the blue spiritual fire for him. This kind of spirit fire is the most suitable for alchemy among the mystic class spirit fires. Ordinary low-grade spirit fires are not as good as it. Listening to the question of an alchemy master from the Kanglang sect, Tianlu Laozu smiled faintly and did not answer. It seemed as if he agreed, but in fact, even Tianlu Laozu secretly sighed that this kid was lucky. He had only been in the cultivation world for a few years, and he already had such a fortuitous encounter. The blue spiritual fire resisted the sea blue flame, and Lu Ping finally took the fifth step. The North Sea Palace was close at hand. Chapter 417. Under the siege of several people, Lu Ping easily walked to a place only 2 steps away from the North Sea Palace. It was obviously beyond the expectations of the alchemy grandmasters in the North Sea Palace. Just as Lu Ping was about to set off again, a colorful mist surrounded Lu Ping. Lu Ping's heart moved, and a layer of golden protective aura floated around his body. When the colorful mist came into contact with Lu Ping's myriad meteoric poison shield, it was like a moth flying into a flame, gathering on the myriad meteoric poison shield. Then, the mist was stripped of its toxins and disappeared in the air. Hey, this kid really has a way to restrain the poisonous mist, and it's so fast. My 5-colored cold shield is quite powerful. Ordinary core forging cultivators would have a hard time dealing with it, but he broke it so easily. 5-colored cold shield? Lu Ping shook his head disdainfully. This kind of thing could only be used as fertilizer for the myriad meteoric poison shield. At this moment, another orange flame flew over. Lu Ping heard Fornax Laozu say angrily from the palace, Wei Shuren, 2 heaven and earth spirit fires. Do you still have any face as an alchemy grandmaster? The hall unexpectedly quieted down, leaving only a few flames rising at the door, changing into various shapes. However, Lu Ping could still feel that when the orange flame flew over, the power of the flames that blocked him immediately decreased a lot, and their attacks also slowed down. Lu Ping smiled slightly. It seemed that Grandmaster Wei Shuren really did not have the temperament of a grandmaster. However, this orange flame was actually a high-grade earth-step meteor flying fire, and it was quite difficult to resist. Right at this moment, a slightly awkward laugh rang out from within the hall. This young friend of yours isn't bad. He must be extremely powerful to have such accomplishments at such a young age. Martial nephew Shuren also wants to see exactly what kind of abilities this young friend possesses. I believe everyone here is rather curious as well. Fornax Laozu sneered, I'm ashamed to be associated with you. To be honest, these methods were really not enough for Lu Ping. As long as Lu Ping brandished the golden scale sword and charged forward, even if he was no match for these alchemy masters, it would not be a problem for him to rush into the North Sea Palace. However, to enter the North Sea Palace, one had to use the methods of alchemy masters, and Lu Ping's water attribute cultivation method was inherently lacking in controlling these spiritual fires. He could not display the full power of the spiritual fires at all. He could only rely on his extraordinarily strong real essence and tyrannical divine sense to tangle with these people. Fortunately, although there were many who tried to stop Lu Ping from entering the North Sea Palace, other than Wei Shuren, no one was willing to make an enemy out of Lu Ping. Besides, with Zhen Lingsek's influence, the crowd naturally wouldn't go all out against Lu Ping. However, they also didn't want a junior like Lu Ping to enter the North Sea Palace so easily. Which one of the alchemy masters in the North Sea Palace had not struggled in the cultivation world for hundreds of years before they had the strength and status they had today? Lu Ping was only a little guy who had only cultivated for a few decades, and yet he could be on equal footing with them. Wouldn't it seem like they had lived their lives like dogs? Why? Therefore, when Wei Shuren disregarded the rules and made up his mind to keep Lu Ping out of the North Sea Palace with 2 spirit fires, the other cultivators only showed a little mercy and didn't stop their attacks, even though they realized that it was too much to ask of Lu Ping. Good, good. The North Sea Palace's Zhenling Furnace Laozu was so angry that he laughed. He looked gloomily at the few cultivators who were trying their best to block Lu Ping and said, The Zhenling Furnace has seen everything that happened today. I don't think so many people will come to the next gathering. Everyone could feel the anger in the heart of one of the few Dharma stage alchemy grandmasters in the North Sea. Today, things had really gone too far. No one had thought that so many people would make a move at once, and that the rash young man outside the door was a troublemaker. When everyone tried to stop him, even if he didn't take a few steps back, he should at least stay where he was for a moment. Since everyone had achieved their goal, they would naturally stop. But this brat took 5 steps in a row and didn't even stop. He walked all the way into the North Sea Palace. Those methods that tried to stop him were easily resolved by him as if they were nothing. This made those alchemy grandmasters who tried to stop him lose face. The meteor flying fire was really like a shooting star, leaving a long trail of flames in the air. When it flew out of the North Sea Palace and smashed towards Lu Ping, a purple flame immediately rose from Lu Ping's body. The Eastern Purple Chi Flame. Looks like Zhenling spent a lot of money on it. It's a mid-earth level spirit fire, but it's still a bit lacking compared to the meteor flying fire. This Zhenling sect's foundation is really deep. After all, they didn't get to be the top sect in the North Sea for thousands of years for nothing. Nonsense, Zhenling is the alchemy master, and the one who attacked is a grandmaster. If a grandmaster doesn't even have a high earth level spirit fire, how can he use it to refine Dharma adepts? In the end, the Eastern Purple Chi Flame was still at a disadvantage. Lu Ping seemed to see the smug face of Zhenling sect's Wei Shuren through the orange-yellow flame. Lu Ping's heart was filled with resentment. Your grandpa Lu must go in today. With a wave of his hand, Lu Ping sent 10 shiny high-grade spirit stones into the Eastern Purple Chi Flame. Almost at the same time, they exploded. Before the rich spiritual energy could disperse, it was absorbed by the Eastern Purple Chi Flame. The Eastern Purple Chi Flame grew stronger after it was replenished. It was no longer in a disadvantageous position, and it managed to block the meteor flying fire. Lu Ping stepped forward with his left foot and took another step forward. Inside the North Sea Palace, Fornax Laozu didn't say anything else after saying those harsh words. Instead, he closed his eyes as if he had entered a meditative state. His calm face didn't reveal a trace of emotion. Instead, it caused the few cultivators who attacked to be at a loss as to what to do next. But now, it was hard for them to back down. If they stopped now, Zhenling might not be on their side, and they would also have to offend Zhenling sect. They would lose face as well. If they didn't stop now, they would have to wait for Fornax Laozu's revenge at the next meeting. These alchemy masters were all here because they had a lot of interests behind them. If they couldn't enter the North Sea Palace, they would lose more than just themselves. At the thought of this, the few alchemy masters who attacked looked resentful. Some of them were from large sects in the North Sea, but the others were rogue cultivators or those who didn't have enough power behind them. Everyone here knew about Zhenling's influence in the North Sea. Other than Laozu, the 8 Dharma adepts who everyone loved to talk about, only Zhenling could counterattack continuously under the wild attacks of the North Sea demon tribe. In comparison, Zhenling sect, which had always been known as the #1 sect in the North Sea, had very few bright spots. It gave people the feeling that the sun was setting in the west. Wei Shuren saw that Lu Ping had actually blocked 2 of his attacks. If he included the divine sense attack from before, that was already 3 times. According to the rule that alchemy masters of the North Sea Palace only attacked once, not only was Wei Shuren bullying the young, but he had also lost face. But now, Wei Shuren had no way out. If he allowed that kid to enter, he would not only lose face, but he would be skinned alive. A fierce look flashed in Wei Shuren's eyes. Ever since he became an alchemy master, he had lived with the ridicule of the North Sea cultivators for more than 100 years. Back then, Mai Shenqin, who had started cultivating later than Zhenling, had blocked him 3 times in a row in the North Sea Palace. Each time, he had retreated with his tail between his legs. Wei Shuren had long become a laughingstock among the alchemy masters of the North Sea Palace. At worst, he would be mocked again. Even if he was condemned by everyone, he couldn't let this kid in today. Wei Shuren had a feeling that this kid would be a genius whose achievements would not be inferior to Mai Xuanqin's in the future. If Wei Shuren missed this opportunity today, it would be difficult to suppress him in the future. Wei Shuren suddenly sat up straight. Tianlu Laozu suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Wei Shuren. Clearly, Tianlu Laozu was not really calm just now. He was constantly paying attention to Wei Shuren's condition. The other alchemy grandmaster of Zhenling sect, Dharma cultivator Dao Li Laozu, was shocked. He sat up straight and said, "Brother Tianlu, what are you doing? Before Dao Li Laozu could finish, he saw a small palm leaf fan suddenly appear in Wei Yishuren's hand. The fan spun and grew to the size of a foot. Spirit light flowed on the fan's surface. It was obviously a spirit-connected artifact. Wei Yishuren's face was ferocious. He swung the fan at the entrance of the North Sea Palace. Tianlu Laozu's furious voice sounded, "Wind fan." Then, a loud noise came from inside the North Sea Palace. The whole palace shook, and Dao Li Laozu's voice came from inside. "Tianlu, what are you doing? I will definitely give you, Junling, an explanation for this." Lu Ping was only one step away from the North Sea Palace. Suddenly, he felt a strange wind blowing toward him, as if it was about to blow into his bones. Then, he saw the meteor flying fire's fire surge. Not only did it suppress the east-rising purple chi, but the other flames that were fighting beside it also retreated like defeated roosters. Lu Ping's eyes were filled with orange flames, as if it would not stop until Lu Ping was burned to ashes. At this critical moment, Lu Ping stretched out his finger and drew faster and faster. The east-rising purple chi in front of him also followed Lu Ping's finger and turned into a spinning cone of fire, colliding with the meteor flying fire. Such a method naturally could not block the meteor flying fire with the help of the wind fan. Lu Ping already had a plan. A blue stream of water suddenly swirled around Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's spiritual yuan surged, and the blue spiritual yuan was injected into the blue stream of water. The entire stream of water seemed to have a layer of light. Facing the surging meteor flying fire, Lu Ping took another step forward. The threshold of the North Sea Palace was finally stepped under Lu Ping's feet, and the surrounding attacks suddenly stopped. The meteor flying fire turned back into a fire seed and flew back to Wei Yishuren's hand. Lu Ping stood at the entrance of the North Sea Palace unscathed. A blue stream of water flowed up and down, protecting Lu Ping. The scene inside the palace was clear at a glance. More than 20 cultivators sat cross-legged in various parts of the palace, looking up and down at Lu Ping with a variety of complex emotions. Lu Ping sneered and lifted his foot to walk into the palace. "Wait, you are not qualified to enter the North Sea Palace. Wei Yishuren, I, Fornax, will kill you today." Just as a loud shout came, it was interrupted by Fornax Laozu's roar. Chapter 418. Lu Ping looked at Wei Yishuren in surprise. Not only Lu Ping, but the other alchemy grandmasters in the palace were also thinking that Wei Yishuren had lost all sense of shame. Xianling sect's Dao Yang ancestor looked at the furious Fornax sect's ancestor with trepidation. He was afraid that the Fornax sect's ancestor would suddenly kill Wei Yishuren and he would not be able to stop it. Although he also knew that the Fornax sect's ancestor would not really kill Wei Yishuren, if the Xianling sect's alchemy grandmaster died in the hands of Zhenling sect, then there would really be no room for reconciliation between the two sects. However, looking at Fornax Laozu's rage, Daoyang Laozu was not confident. At the same time, he could not help but blame Wei Yishuren in his heart. "You said that you were ruined by Zhenling's My Shen Qin, and now that you have become an alchemy grandmaster, you came to the North Sea Palace to feel proud. After all, the appearance of an alchemy grandmaster is also the glory of the sect. You said that you want to teach Zhenling's junior a lesson to vent your anger. That is also understandable. You said that you have broken the rules several times, so you want to vent your anger." Daoyang Laozu pinched his nose. "That is also understandable. But what is going on now? Wei Yishuren has come in with his own ability, but you are still so unforgiving. You, Wei Yishuren, are the laughingstock of the North Sea alchemy world. You don't mind losing face once or twice, but Xianling sect still wants to save face." Daoyang Laozu finally could not stand it anymore and said, "Martial nephew Wei, enough." Unexpectedly, at this moment, Wei Yishuren seemed to have gone mad. He ignored Laozu's scolding and said to Lu Ping, "The North Sea Palace has always had a rule that anyone who can enter this palace must use the means of an alchemy master. You, a junior, used a stream of heaven and earth spirit water to block the spiritual fire we use for alchemy. What kind of logic is this? Can this spiritual water be used for alchemy?" In the silent hall, only Wei Yishuren's slightly deranged voice echoed. Although the cultivators present had already recognized Lu Ping's right to enter the North Sea Palace, when they heard Wei Shuren's words, they only curiously looked at the water ribbon around Lu Ping's body. Then, with a look of realization, they said, "I was wondering how he could block the meteor flying fire. So it's the Earth-grade Kanglan water. In this case, coupled with the east-rising purple chi from before, he should be able to block it." Surprisingly, the cultivators in the hall all ignored Lu Ping's rule-breaking behavior. At the very least, Wei Shuren had broken the rules by attacking Lu Ping several times in a row. Although Wei Shuren was using the means of an alchemist, and the rules were not the same as the rules, he couldn't be so shameless. A late-core forging realm cultivator was attacking a mid-core forging realm cultivator repeatedly. If the mid-core forging realm cultivator didn't defend with all his might, would he have to stretch out his neck and let Wei Shuren kill him? Lu Ping looked at Wei Shuren, who did not have the bearing of an alchemy grandmaster, and was speechless. Grandmaster Wei Shuren was obviously unaware of the situation in the palace. He continued to say loudly, "We alchemy masters do not use water to refine pills. Since you have broken the rules, you should leave. There is no place for you in the North Sea Palace." Lu Ping ignored Wei Shuren and walked straight into the palace. At this time, Wei Shuren finally came to his senses. He realized that his words had not been approved by the cultivators in North Sea Palace. However, the cultivators in the palace looked at each other. The rules of the alchemy world had always been strict. If it were not for Wei Shuren's insistence today, which was really annoying, Lu Ping would not have been able to enter North Sea Palace no matter what. However, if they allowed Lu Ping to enter North Sea Palace, it seemed that the rules would be broken. Therefore, more than 10 alchemy grandmasters in North Sea Palace looked at the Dharma stage alchemy grandmasters sitting in the seats of honor. The grandmasters then looked at Fornax Laozu. Obviously, no one wanted to offend Fornax Laozu. However, Fornax Laozu seemed to be even more ruthless. This time, he really closed his eyes and meditated. For a moment, the Dharma stage alchemy grandmasters of North Sea Palace seemed to have no idea what to do. However, Lu Ping thought for a moment and sneered at Wei Shuren. "Who said that spirit water can't be used to refine pills?" Lu Ping took out a few ordinary spirit herbs from his storage ring. With a thought, the Kanglan water suddenly turned into a three-legged cauldron. A stream of water wrapped the spirit herbs into the cauldron. In just a moment, a blood-refining stage spirit water pill was out of the cauldron. Many of the alchemy masters in the palace looked at Lu Ping in surprise. They all whispered, "What kind of method is this? How can spirit water be used to refine pills? Is this the legendary spirit water pill formation technique? Is the legend true? Is there really such a miraculous alchemy technique? It's really miraculous. Now there's no reason to expel Zhenling's disciple from North Sea Palace. This Wei Shuren. I didn't expect that even after becoming an alchemy grandmaster, he's still a nobody. This time, Xianling sect. Hee. Wei Shuren was stunned when he saw Lu Ping using the Kanglan water to concoct a medicinal pellet. As a grandmaster alchemist, how could Wei Shuren not know about medicinal pellets made out of spirit water? However, he always thought it was just a legend that couldn't be taken seriously. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, even the great grandmaster alchemist was stunned. In the end, he murmured, "How is this possible? How is this possible?" However, at that moment, even Daoyang Laozu shook his head helplessly. Since it's the spirit water pill formation technique, there's no doubt about it. "Master Lu, please take a seat." Daoyang Laozu had personally acknowledged Lu Ping's qualifications. In the eyes of others, it was as if Xianling's sect had bowed down to Zhenling. Daoyang Laozu was also helpless. This time, Wei Shuren was too unreasonable. Fornax Laozu was furious, and Daoyang Laozu knew that Fornax Laozu was going to kill Zhenling. Even if Xianling's sect did not fear Zhenling, if Fornax Laozu really killed Wei Shuren, Zhenling would at least be in the right in North Sea. Looking at Wei Shuren's dazed expression, Daoyang Laozu frowned. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Lu Ping walk towards Fornax Laozu and say, "Since it's a competition between pill masters, and they're using pill master techniques, I'll return the favor." As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he threw a few thumb-sized pills of various colors at the cultivators who attacked him. What was that? Some of the pill masters looked at the pills flying towards them with puzzled eyes. Some of the cultivators guessed what it was, and their eyes were filled with surprise. Even if they didn't, they still looked nervous. Of course, there were also some cultivators who didn't take it seriously. However, just as the medicinal pellets were about to reach the alchemy grandmasters, a majestic spiritual power surged out from the medicinal pellets. Then, the medicinal pellets suddenly exploded, releasing a variety of spells that surged towards the cultivators who attacked Lu Ping. Intentional combat pill. It's really an intentional combat pill. I didn't expect this person to not only master the legendary pill refining technique of using spiritual water to cultivate pills, but also know how to refine an unorthodox pill like the intentional combat pill. Only the fierce dragon dares to cross the river. What is he doing? Challenging so many alchemy grandmasters by himself? How dare he? Amidst the exclamations of many cultivators in the North Sea Palace, the pills that Lu Ping threw out turned into a black fire, emitting billowing poisonous smoke. It was the black prison poisonous fire that they had seen before, burning towards one of the cultivators. Another turned into a thin needle of ice water and shot towards another cultivator. There was also a small pill that gave birth to a strange one-horned dragon. With a silent roar, it rushed towards an alchemy master with a sonorous sound of metal colliding. Another turned into a torrent of sword techniques, and dense sword lights rushed towards one of the cultivators. These intentional combat pills were used by Lu Ping in his spare time to practice, but this time, he had another purpose. Just now, Fornax Laozu had said that he would make things difficult for the cultivators who attacked Lu Ping at the next meeting. Although Fornax Laozu had only said it out of anger, the alchemy masters of the North Sea Palace were interested in it. Everyone was afraid of the power of the North Sea Palace, so in order to protect themselves, they took some necessary defensive measures. It was inevitable that they would treat Zhenling as an enemy. As a result, Zhenling would be isolated in the alchemy world. This time, Lu Ping's actions were to dispel the concerns of the alchemy masters who attacked him. Lu Ping knew that these intentional combat pills could not do anything to these cultivators, who were at least in the late core forging realm. However, most alchemy masters were not good at fighting, and the power of Lu Ping's intentional combat pills was unleashed when they were caught off guard. Some of the cultivators did not even know what an intentional combat pill was. For a moment, the cultivators who were attacked by Lu Ping were flustered. However, the ones who were in the most danger were not them, but Wei Shuren, who had suffered a huge mental blow. Wei Shuren had attacked Lu Ping 3 times, and Lu Ping had also returned 3 intentional combat pills. However, these 3 intentional combat pills were the most powerful ones that Lu Ping had refined after advancing to the middle core forging realm. A purple pill was the first to explode, and a sword shadow flashed out, slashing towards Wei Shuren's head. True Essence 1 Sword Chi. Wei Shuren was in a trance, but he was a late core forging realm cultivator after all, and he was not a weak alchemy master. When Lu Ping's True Essence 1 Sword Chi slashed down, Wei Shuren was shocked. A pill furnace jumped up from the top of Wei Shuren's head, and with a dang sound, a sword light that seemed to have materialized hit the pill furnace. Wei Shuren felt a huge force, and his body immediately fell back. Lu Ping looked at the pill furnace above Wei Shuren's head, and his eyes narrowed slightly. This was obviously a top-grade pill furnace, but it was too extravagant to use a pill furnace as a defensive artifact. Although it was also an alchemy master's method, it was too extravagant. This Xian Ling sect was really rich. However, Lu Ping's methods were not limited to this. Immediately after the True Essence 1 Sword Chi, another pill exploded, and the sky was filled with spiritual sword light that swept towards Wei Shuren like a torrent. The top-grade pill furnace above Wei Shuren's head suddenly emitted a series of explosions. Daoyang Laozu's mouth twitched as he watched from the side, while Tianlu Laozu laughed loudly. However, a top-grade pill furnace was still comparable to a spiritual weapon, and the true power of these intentional combat pills could not compare to the same swordsmanship that Lu Ping used with the golden scale sword. The torrent of sword light hit the pill furnace, and countless small holes appeared on its body, but it was not destroyed in the end. Wei Shuren, who had just reacted, felt his heart ache. Although Lu Ping knew that his intentional combat pills could not do anything to this pill furnace, he still felt a little regretful when he saw the result. However, Lu Ping still had a third intentional combat pill. Chapter 419. Two powerful intentional combat pills in a row made Wei Yishuren wobble left and right like a roly-poly doll. A top-grade pill furnace was also hit until it was full of holes. However, at this moment, Lu Ping's third intentional combat pill also arrived. At this time, Wei Yishuren was already a little exhausted by Lu Ping's means. Although he was a late-stage core forging cultivator, under the continuous blows, especially the damage to his mind, this alchemy grandmaster no longer had a trace of high-spirited performance. But seeing the third intentional combat pill explode, Wei Yishuren had to endure the pain in his heart and put this top-grade pill furnace on top of his head. However, to Wei Yishuren's surprise, Lu Ping's third intentional combat pill did not contain any powerful spells, but a wave. Just as the third intentional combat pill exploded, the water vapor around the North Sea Palace gathered here, and a huge wave of water splashed down. Wei Yishuren was caught off guard. At this time, how could he still care about the alchemy grandmaster's means? He quickly propped up his protective aura, but then he felt a huge force directly pressing down on him. Wei Yishuren's body arched, and he felt the true essence contained in his protective aura leaking out in an instant. Wei Yishuren knew that something was wrong and was about to take measures, but it was too late. Wei Yishuren's protective aura had been corroded, and the all-pervasive waves had rushed into Wei Yishuren's protective aura, drenching him, a late-stage core forging cultivator of Xian Ling sect and an alchemy grandmaster. This was a naked slap in the face, a blatant humiliation. Wei Yishuren's body shook, and a white mist suddenly rose from his body, drying his drenched clothes. Although it only took a blink of an eye from the moment Lu Ping drenched him to the moment Wei Yishuren used a spell to dry him, everyone present had already seen everything. If Wei Yishuren's dignity as an alchemy grandmaster that was stepped on by Zhenling Mai Shenqin was finally picked up because he became an alchemy grandmaster, then from the moment Lu Ping drenched him, Wei Yishuren no longer had any dignity in the North Sea cultivation world. No matter how shameless Wei Yishuren was, he was the one who didn't want it, but it was a different matter to be humiliated by someone else. You, Junior, you're courting death. Courting death? Who do you want to die? Without waiting for Lu Ping to refute, Fornak's cauldron ancestor interrupted. His eyes stared at Wei Yishuren as if he wanted to eat him alive. Wei Yishuren was furious, and just as he was about to refute, Laozu stopped him and said, "Brother Qianlu, Martial Nephew Wei was too impatient just now, why don't we just let it go?" Before Wei Yishuren attacked Lu Ping several times, Qianlu Laozu was furious and said that he wanted to kill Wei Yishuren. Now that Lu Ping had gotten back at him, Qianlu Laozu naturally would not meddle and kill Wei Yishuren. Hence, he sneered at Wei Yishuren and said, "Since this kid has gotten back at him, let's forget about today's matter. There's no need for the old man to do anything unnecessary." Although Qianlu Laozu continued Laozu's words, he said it for the alchemy masters in the North Sea Palace who had attacked Lu Ping just now. Therefore, after Qianlu Laozu finished speaking, the alchemy masters heaved a sigh of relief. When they looked at Lu Ping again, there was a trace of gratitude in their eyes. After all, to them, it was really something to be thankful for not being constantly targeted by a Dharma power adept like Laozu. The changes in these people's expressions naturally could not be hidden from the Dharma power adepts present. They all secretly sighed at the two foxes, one big and one small. Qianlu Laozu, the Dharma power adept of the Sea Flame sect, said, "All right, since these small matters have been settled, the alchemy gathering should begin. We should first exchange what we need." Most of the alchemy masters in the North Sea Palace nodded in agreement with Qianlu Laozu's words. Lu Ping also felt a little impatient. This was the first time he had participated in such a grand event, so he was naturally looking forward to it. After the gathering began, all the alchemy masters stood up and walked towards different cultivators as if they had been prepared in advance. Even Qianlu Laozu and Shu Minute Laozu of the Misty Water Pavilion were discussing something. From time to time, they would exchange some jade boxes, storage bags, and the like with each other. Lu Ping thought about it and understood in his heart. Each sect had their own land of inheritance, spiritual herbs, and spiritual gardens, but they did not dare to say that they had all the spiritual herbs. Moreover, each sect had different ways of cultivating various spiritual herbs. Some sects were good at cultivating this kind of spiritual herb, so the production of this kind of spiritual herb was higher and the quality was better. Some sects were good at cultivating this kind of spiritual herb, so the production of this kind of spiritual herb was higher, and the quality was better. Some sects were good at cultivating another kind of spiritual herb, so the two sects could exchange what they needed. As soon as the gathering began, all the sects seemed to have already found a target and began to talk in secret. This was because the elixir gathering had been held dozens of times. Although each sect didn't know which sect was rich in spiritual herbs, they had a general understanding of each sect. This time, Tianlu Laozu obviously brought Lu Ping here to broaden his horizons. He didn't give him the task of exchanging spiritual herbs, so Lu Ping didn't have to deal with this palace full of old foxes. Some of these people's alchemy skills might not be as good as Lu Ping's, but their knowledge was not inferior to Lu Ping's. After all, living longer was an advantage after all. Lu Ping touched the storage ring on his hand and counted his own assets. This time, in addition to the hundreds of spiritual herbs that he had collected before, Lu Ping also had more than 1,000 spiritual herbs that he had collected on Huangli Island. At the same time, he had also robbed the hundreds of spiritual herbs that Luan Yu had collected in the Golden House. In this way, Lu Ping had collected 2,500 spiritual herbs. In addition, Lu Ping also had 70 to 80 spiritual herbs that were 3,000 years old. Most of them were collected from the spiritual herb garden on the Lonely Mountain in the Golden House. These spiritual herbs had been carefully cultivated by Luan Yu for several years, so they were really full of medicinal properties and were of high quality. Lu Ping walked back and forth in the palace. Many alchemists would take out their spiritual herb samples to compare with each other when they were exchanging. At this time, there would also be cultivators next to them coming forward to evaluate. Naturally, Lu Ping also went forward to listen to the opinions of others. When the other cultivators saw Lu Ping coming, they all nodded and smiled. Obviously, they had already approved of Lu Ping's entry into the North Sea Palace. In addition, there was Junling behind Lu Ping, so these alchemists had no choice but to treat them carefully. Some alchemists even handed the spiritual herbs in their hands to Lu Ping for evaluation. In addition to their recognition of him, naturally, they also wanted to test him. Lu Ping did not refuse any of them. If he knew, he would say it, and if he didn't know, he would say he didn't know. He had the 3 pure true pupils. These years, he had been running around everywhere, and the people he came into contact with were alchemy geniuses like Luan Yu and Yu Jiangrui. What he received were the guidance of the top alchemy grandmasters in the cultivation world like Yang Wujiu, Hongye Laozu, and Tianlu Laozu. Even though his own experience was limited, as long as it was something he knew, he could directly point out the essence in a few words, which made the alchemists around him gasp in admiration. When they looked at Lu Ping again, there was more or less a trace of respect in their eyes. If before, most of the people were polite to him because of Junling behind him and his age, which could be regarded as potential, now everyone had already regarded Lu Ping as a real and quite strong alchemy grandmaster. Lu Xiaoyu, did you see anything in this gathering? How was the harvest? Lu Ping turned around and saw an old man standing behind him with a smile on his face. Lu Ping cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, senior. This junior came here mainly to gain some experience with the elders of the sect. I haven't exchanged anything with you. May I ask who you are?" The old man smiled and said, "Old man Liao Ruanjia, Liao who is my son." Lu Ping suddenly realized and said, "So it is Senior Liao, Junior greets you. Junior and brother Liao have not seen each other for nearly 20 years since we parted at the 7-star cave heaven. How is brother Liao recently?" Liao Ruanjia smiled and said, "That kid is not comparable to you. In the past 2 years, he has just barely broken through the core forging stage. He is still far from becoming an alchemy grandmaster." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Congratulations, Senior Liao. The Liao family has a long history. Brother Lu will definitely become a great person in the future." It is a pity that Junior didn't know that Brother Liao had reached the gold core stage. Otherwise, I would have visited and congratulated you. This Liao, who was a member of the North Sea's Liao family that Lu Ping came into contact with in the Golden Fallen Valley. The North Sea's Liao family was a famous alchemy family in the North Sea. Their alchemy skills were quite unique. Although this family had not produced any famous cultivators in the North Sea for thousands of years, there would always be an alchemy grandmaster in every generation. After thousands of years, the Liao family had some influence in the North Sea. In particular, the North Sea's rogue cultivators would often go to the Liao family to ask for alchemy pills. The Liao family never embezzled any cultivators' spiritual herbs. However, what really allowed the Liao family to gain a foothold in the North Sea was the miraculous pill, the heart-dissolving pill. This was a miraculous pill that could raise a blood condensation realm cultivator's cultivation level by 1 level. Unfortunately, the spirit herbs required to concoct this pill were extremely rare. Hence, the Liao family could only concoct a limited number of pills each time. However, every time they concocted a pill, the cultivators of the North Sea would fight over it. This also allowed the Liao family to accumulate quite a bit of wealth, allowing them to continue to grow and develop the family. But what Grandmaster Liao Ruanjia didn't know was that the Liao family's most secretive pill, the heart-dissolving pill, had long been in the hands of Lu Ping. Even the heart-forging pill, which the Liao family had kept a secret for thousands of years, was obtained by Lu Ping from enlightened Master Liao Ding's belongings in the Golden Fallen Valley. It could be said that Lu Ping's current achievements were greatly aided by enlightened Master Liao Ding's inheritance. Naturally, Lu Ping wouldn't say these things out loud. However, this didn't prevent Lu Ping from feeling grateful to the Liao family. Moreover, Liao Hu and Lu Ping were friends when they were in the Golden Fallen Valley. Hehe, what a coincidence. I, the old man, have some things here. I wonder if Lu Xiaoyu is interested in them? If there's anything you like, how about we trade? This Liao Ruanjia was a thoughtful person. Lu Ping smiled and said, since Senior wants to take care of me, Junior will naturally do as you say. Chapter 420. Who in the North Sea Palace couldn't see Lu Ping's status in the Fornax Laozu, or rather, in the Zhenling sect? He had only cultivated for a few decades, but his cultivation had already reached the mid-core forging stage. He was a famous genius of the North Sea Palace, and now he was also an alchemy grandmaster. How many of such outstanding juniors could there be in the North Sea? Liao Ruanjia's purpose was very simple. He was betting that Lu Ping wouldn't die prematurely in the future. He would inevitably become a cultivator in the Zhenling sect, and his name would shake the North Sea Palace. At that time, deliberately befriending him would bring benefits to the family. Lu Ping was also very clear about Liao Ruanjia's thoughts, because he had encountered this kind of situation more than once. To deal with this kind of situation, Lu Ping's method was also very simple. Who wouldn't take advantage of a situation? Liao Ruanjia directly handed a jade slip to Lu Ping. Lu Ping swept it with his divine sense. The jade slip recorded the treasures that Liao Ruanjia had brought with him to the alchemist gathering. There were a variety of spirit grasses, pills, pill recipes, and so on. There were more than 100 of them. Lu Ping pondered for a long time and said, I wonder if the pill recipes for the spirit stabilizing pill, soul restoring pill, soul nourishing pill, and divine accumulating pill can be exchanged. Liao Ruanjia stared blankly for a moment and said, Lu Xiaoyu has a good eye. Of these 7 pills, the first 3 are Chimen pills with many uses. The last 4 are suitable for young friends mid-core forging stage cultivation. The spirit stabilizing pill, soul replenishing pill, soul nourishing pill, and divine accumulating pill can be exchanged, but Lu Xiaoyu must take out the same amount of pill recipes. If you take out a pill recipe that my Liao family already has, then it can't be exchanged. The other 3 pill recipes are my Liao family's secret, so they can't be exchanged. However, if it's Lu Xiaoyu, you can use spirit grasses to exchange for 3 types of refined pills. Lu Ping pondered for a moment. With his cultivation method, if he didn't want his cultivation to fall behind cultivators of the same level, then he needed to find a way to increase his cultivation. However, If a cultivator took too many of the same type of pill, then the body would develop a resistance, which would greatly weaken the effect of the pill. Therefore, during the process of cultivation, cultivators would have to constantly change the types of pills they took. With Lu Ping's current status as an alchemy grandmaster, even if spirit herbs were scarce in the cultivation world, it wouldn't affect him too much. However, Lu Ping's cultivation method, due to the strong foundation and the influence of the Shenyuan heavy water, was bound to greatly slow down Lu Ping's cultivation speed. Thus, Lu Ping had to take far more pills than cultivators of the same level in order to increase his cultivation. At this time, Lu Ping needed to constantly collect a variety of pill recipes that were suitable for his cultivation stage. This was to prevent Lu Ping from not having a suitable pill to take before he had a breakthrough in his cultivation. Lu Ping picked out 4 pill recipes for mid-core forging stage pills from his storage ring. After Lu Ping became an alchemy grandmaster, especially after Lu Ping was able to refine late-core forging stage pills, Junling had already opened up all the pill recipes in the sect's collection to Lu Ping. Junling had tens of thousands of years of inheritance, so the pills for the core forging stage could be considered all-inclusive. However, Lu Ping naturally had to set his sights high. For his own cultivation, he first had to choose a pill that was suitable for water attribute cultivation methods. Secondly, he had to see if it had an effect on cultivators of the Flood Dragon bloodline. As a result, there weren't many pills that could catch Lu Ping's eye. This Liao family was worthy of being an alchemy family with thousands of years of inheritance. Lu Ping, who had seen Junling's heritage, was actually able to see 7 pill recipes that Junling didn't have. This already made Lu Ping sigh in admiration. The 7 pill recipes that caught his eye were naturally very suitable for his cultivation method, but it was a pity that 3 of them were Liao family's secret techniques that were not passed on to others. Liao Ruanjia carefully looked at the 4 pill recipes that Lu Ping handed over. His face showed a hint of joy as he said, "Lu Xiaoyou's vision is admirable. The value of these 4 pill recipes is indeed comparable to the 4 pill recipes that the old man has. Unfortunately, 2 of these pill recipes are already in my Liao family's possession, but the remaining 2 are something that my Liao family doesn't have. I just don't know which 2 pill recipes Lu Xiaoyu is interested in." The pill recipes that Lu Ping was able to take out were also approved by Fornax Laozu in advance. Otherwise, with Junling's heritage, Lu Ping didn't believe that the pill recipes that Junling was unwilling to take out wouldn't be able to exchange for the remaining 2 pill recipes. The key was that these pill recipes were the same as the 3 pill recipes that Liao Ruanjia refused to exchange with Lu Ping. They were also secrets of Junling. Then let's have the stabilizing spirit pill and the accumulating spirit pill. Lu Ping and Liao Ruanjia exchanged the 2 pill recipes. Lu Ping also exchanged 150,000-year-old spirit grasses for the stabilizing wave pill, the falling spirit pill, and the non-perceiving pill. Lu Ping originally wanted to exchange for 3 bottles of each, but Liao Ruanjia smiled and refused because he didn't have enough spirit pills on him. Naturally, Lu Ping knew this was just an excuse. Liao Ruanjia definitely had more of these 3 types of medicinal pellets, but he couldn't possibly have too many of them. There were more than 20 alchemists from the various sects, so it was impossible for Liao Ruanjia to let Lu Ping buy all of his medicinal pellets. Lu Ping regretfully shook his head, once again took the jade slip in Liao Ruanjia's hand and began to look at it. This time, Lu Ping saw a rather strange pill at the end of the jade slip. Bone forging pill? This was quite a novel pill. Could it be? Lu Ping's heart was filled with joy, carefully looking at the contents of the bone forging pill. After a while, he asked Liao Ruanjia with a slightly surprised expression, "Senior Liao, your family really deserves to be called a family with 1,000 years of inheritance. You even have this kind of pill that can strengthen the body?" Just like the golden body pill that Lu Ping had obtained in the blood condensation realm, this bone forging pill was a pill that could strengthen the body of a cultivator. Moreover, from the medicinal effect, the bone forging pill seemed to be much more effective than the golden body pill. However, the bone forging pill had a limit, only the first 3 pills could be used, while the golden body pill could be used continuously to strengthen the body. When Liao Ruanjia saw that Lu Ping had noticed the bone forging pill, he couldn't help but smile, this bone-forging pill is indeed a kind of miraculous pill. Many Fa Xiong Laozu are willing to exchange for this kind of pill from my Liao family. I didn't expect that Lu Xiaoyu would also be interested in this kind of pill. Lu Ping was puzzled. This kind of pill that can strengthen the body is said to be very useful for Fa Xiong Laozu's cultivation. It is reasonable to say that this kind of pill should be extremely precious. Why would your family put this kind of pill in the list of things that can be exchanged for? Liao Ruanjia seemed to have already known that Lu Ping would ask such a question, so he replied with a smile, because the main ingredient needed to refine this kind of pill is a kind of spirit demon fruit that has matured for more than 1,000 years. Spirit demon fruit? Lu Ping had a puzzled look on his face, but in his heart, there was a burst of excitement. He thought that Lu Ping did not know much about spirit demons, so he continued, the so-called spirit demon fruit is actually a kind of demon race. However, spirit demons are a kind of demon race that can only become demon race after grass, wood, bamboo, or stone has gained spiritual intelligence and comprehended the cultivation method. These spirit demons have too many innate limitations. Before they reach the golden core stage, they cannot even move their bodies and can die at any time. Moreover, the seventh patriarch did not leave behind many cultivation methods for spirit demons, so even if these spirit demons reach the golden core stage, they are often weak. Seeing that Lu Ping was listening attentively, Liao Ruanjia could not help but nod and continue. However, in the eyes of other cultivators, this spirit demon is often full of treasures. There are generally two ways for spirit demons to awaken their spiritual intelligence. One is to instinctively absorb spirit chi for thousands of years to open their spiritual intelligence, and the other is to coincidentally be born with some heavenly treasures and be influenced to open their spiritual intelligence. The former, after a long period of nourishment with spirit chi, even a stubborn stone can become a top-grade spirit stone, not to mention the latter. Most of the things that can affect the spirit demon's spiritual intelligence are heavenly treasures. And some grass spirit demons will often bear fruit. These fruits, as the condensation of the essence of spirit medicine, are naturally heavenly treasures. The bone-forging pill uses this kind of fruit that has matured for more than 1,000 years as the main ingredient. The more mature the fruit, the more obvious the strengthening effect of the refined bone-forging pill on the body. After listening to Liao Ruanjia's introduction, Lu Ping looked a little hesitant and asked, "Senior Liao, where can I get this spirit demon fruit? This junior would also like to exchange for this pill recipe, is that possible?" Liao Ruanjia's expression showed that he had expected this and said, "Let me first let you know that the chances of a spirit demon appearing in this world are extremely low. In some of the most inaccessible places, there may be one or two spirit demons appearing. At least in the North Sea, there has not been a spirit demon appearing for thousands of years. However, in the inheritance grounds of some of the famous sects in the Middle Earth, it is not impossible for one or two spirit demons to exist." The Middle Earth. Senior Liao has some understanding of the Middle Earth. Can you tell this junior about the situation in the Middle Earth? This junior has been looking forward to the Middle Earth for a long time. When Lu Ping saw that Liao Ruanjia's expression revealed a trace of nostalgia when he mentioned the Middle Earth, he was greatly curious and purposely asked Liao Ruanjia with an expression of yearning and amazement. Unexpectedly, Liao Ruanjia laughed and said, "This is only a wild guess of the old man. After all, it is said that some of the famous sects in the Middle Earth have a long history of inheritance. Some of them can even be traced back to tens of thousands of years ago when the seventh patriarch split the heavens. That is why this guess was made. It is not accurate." Seeing that Liao Ruanjia was unwilling to say more, Lu Ping also suppressed the doubts in his heart and said, "What a pity." However, this junior still wants to exchange for this bone-forging pill recipe. Perhaps this junior will have the opportunity to meet a spirit demon fruit in the future. Liao Ruanjia laughed and said, "That is indeed true. Lu Xiaoyu has cultivated for less than 100 years. Based on your current cultivation, a mid-core forging realm cultivator has a lifespan of 600 years. You have 500 years to travel around the world. Old people like us can't compare in any way. Not to mention, your cultivation will not stop here. In this way, it is very likely that you will be able to obtain a spirit demon fruit in the future." Lu Ping ignored these compliments, but this pill recipe was really not cheap. Lu Ping used 300,000-year-old spirit grass and 33,000-year-old spirit grass before Liao Ruanjia was satisfied and handed the bone-forging pill recipe to the pained Lu Ping. At this time, Lu Ping was already shouting in his heart that he had made a profit. What Liao Ruanjia didn't know was that Lu Ping ate one of the 18 spirit demon peaches in the Golden House. He had eaten one, given 3 to his master, and Chu Xiancheng had eaten one. Now, he still had 13 in his hands. These were genuine spirit demon fruits. Chapter 421. Under the careful care of Luan Yu, 1 or 2 golden resilience pills in Lu Ping's Golden House matured every 3 years. Lu Ping used all of them to refine golden resilience pills for himself. Lu Ping could feel that even without the support of spiritual core, his body could compete with a low-level magic tool. However, as Lu Ping's cultivation base advanced to the core forging realm, the golden resilience pellet's strengthening effect was still there, but it wasn't as obvious anymore. The appearance of the bone forging pellet made Lu Ping's eyes light up. Unfortunately, each cultivator could only consume 3 bone forging pellets. Furthermore, the bone forging pellet was very different from other medicinal pellets. The bone forging pellet could only be refined once per cauldron. Success was success, failure was failure. However, this also made Lu Ping's eyes light up. This method was suitable for spirit water nourishing pills. Spirit water nourishing pills could only be refined once per furnace. Regardless of whether it was a blood refining stage pill or a transcendent stage pill, a furnace of spirit herbs could only guarantee 1 pill. However, this way, the success rate of refining had increased a lot. In the end, spirit water nourishing pills were suitable for precious pills with low success rates. This was the best way to refine the bone forging pill. In fact, Lu Ping had a natural treasure that could strengthen the body. It was even more effective than the bone forging pill. It was the rank 9 white jade lotus root that he found in the 100 Flowers land in the Fallen Mystery Land. This lotus root had 9 segments, and each segment was a top-grade treasure for refining the body. Unfortunately, the level of the lotus root was too high. At the moment, Lu Ping was not confident that he could refine it into a body-strengthening pill. Lu Ping put away the pill recipes. He knew that after the various sects exchanged information, it was time for the main event of this gathering. It was time for the alchemy masters and grandmasters to show their true strength. These things were not considered as their trump cards. However, this did not prevent Lu Ping from asking some questions. Senior Liao, does your family have life essence pills that are more than 5 years old? I, Zhenling, am willing to pay a high price for them and will keep this a secret for your family. Liao Ruanjia was a little stunned as he looked at Lu Ping's serious expression. After a moment, he said with a smile, "Little friend Lu, you're looking for the essence longevity elixir for your esteemed sect's old ancestor Tian Kang, right?" Huh! Lu Ping's heart tightened as he thought to himself that even the Liao clan knew about junior uncle Tian Kang's group. But then, he felt relieved. Perhaps Zhenling's sect didn't hide forefather Tian Kang's matter from the North Sea cultivators. Sure enough, Liao Ruanjia looked at Lu Ping, who suddenly became vigilant, and said with a smile, "Little friend, I'm afraid you don't know this, but your sect has already exchanged for a 3-year life essence pill from my Liao family. For the sake of Qiankang Laozu, your sect has been searching for life essence pills and pill recipes in the entire North Sea for decades. This is no secret in the North Sea. Now, your sect's Qianlu Laozu probably has the largest collection of life essence pill recipes in the North Sea. In the past, my Liao family also had a 3-year life essence pill, but Qianlu Laozu personally came to exchange for it with some heavenly materials and earthly treasures. Now, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to find another life essence pill in the North Sea that Zhenling doesn't have." Lu Ping saw that Liao Ruanjia was so familiar with this matter, so he was obviously not lying. Originally, Lu Ping just wanted to give it a try, but he didn't expect that the Liao family really did have life essence pills. Unfortunately, Zhenling had already exchanged for it. Although Lu Ping felt a bit regretful, his interest in the Liao family grew a bit more. Life essence pills were not something ordinary families could have. In the cultivation world of the North Sea, A 3-year life essence pill was considered a rare treasure. At the very least, only the great clans like the 10 great sects could have it. Although the Liao family itself was an alchemy family, it could still have a life essence pill as an inheritance. This showed that this family was quite extraordinary. In addition, Liao Ruanjia's words revealed a sense of familiarity with the Central Plains. This made Lu Ping even more interested in the Liao family. Does Senior Liao know of any other family in the East Sea that has this life essence pill? Lu Ping asked with a frown. From Liao Ruanjia's words, Lu Ping could tell that Zhenling had been collecting life essence pill recipes for a long time. Moreover, Zhenling had probably collected almost all the life essence pill recipes in the North Sea. Sure enough, Liao Ruanjia signaled Lu Ping with his eyes and said with a wry smile, "I'm afraid only this family still has life essence pill recipes that you, Zhenling, haven't collected yet." Lu Ping turned around and saw Tianlu Laozu walking towards Shenling sect's Dao Li Laozu. The two Laozus seemed to be discussing something. Not long after, Tianlu Laozu angrily left in a hurry. Dao Li Laozu looked at Tianlu Laozu's back with a cold smile on his face. Liao Ruanjia pondered for a moment and briefly explained to Lu Ping, "The matter of your sect's Qiankang Laozu seems to be related to the grudge between your sect and Shenling sect. Shenling sect absolutely does not want Qiankang Laozu to live for a few more years." Of course, Lu Ping knew about this, but he still said, "Thank you for your advice, Senior Liao." Liao Ruanjia smiled embarrassedly and said, "Actually, the old man also came with a request." Lu Ping felt a little strange, but he still replied cautiously, "Senior is too polite. If Senior has any request, as long as it is within Junior's ability, I will do my best." Liao Ruanjia sternly said, "This old man has also heard about your esteemed sect's Daoist Shen senator before today. There were many alchemists in the Northern Seas alchemy world who scoffed at the spirit water pill nurturing technique. However, my Liao clan knows that this alchemy technique truly exists. Today, I wish to exchange for a spirit water vein nurturing pill that can cure Daoist Shen Sen O." Lu Ping disapprovingly took out a small jade crystal box from his storage ring. Ever since Lu Ping used the Spirit Water Meridian incubating pill to save spiritual master Shen Sen from the brink of collapse, Zhenling had attached great importance to it. Fornax Laozu directly threw a bag of spiritual herbs to Lu Ping and asked him to refine 10 pills first. What kind of person was Lu Ping? Naturally, he wouldn't hand over as many pills as he could refine. Therefore, other than the 10 pills he gave to Fornax Laozu, Lu Ping kept 3 for himself. Fornax Laozu didn't even ask. Liao Ruanjia looked at the jade crystal box in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping used a see-through technique, and Liao Ruanjia could see the Spirit Water Meridian incubating pill through the surface of the jade crystal box. A trace of joy immediately appeared on his face. However, when he saw the disapproving expression on Lu Ping's face, he hesitated for a moment and said to Lu Ping, "Little friend, I'm afraid you still don't know the value of the Spirit Water Meridian incubating pill, right?" Lu Ping was startled. "What do you mean, Senior?" After your esteemed sect's Daoist master Shen Sen, in recent years, several core forging enlightened masters from various sects in the North Sea were ambushed by the demon clan. Although a few of them were lucky enough to escape, they also lost all of their blood vessels and lost all of their cultivation. 3 of them died when their cultivation collapsed and their lifespans ran out. 4 of them barely managed to stay alive, but they were struggling at death's door and didn't have many days left. The demon clan's strange divine ability has already caused fear in the hearts of cultivators from various sects. After all, it's normal to have casualties when fighting against demon clan cultivators. But now, once they are injured, their cultivation will be destroyed. How can this not make the cultivators of the various sects feel restrained? Hearing Liao Ruanjia's words, Lu Ping was puzzled. If that's the case, our sect's Uncle Master Shen Sen's cultivation should have been restored long ago. The sects should have already known about it. Why do so many people seem to not agree with the spiritual water pill incubating technique at the beginning? Some of them don't even know about it. Liao Ruanjia smiled helplessly. Daoist Master Shen Sen was the only late-stage core forging cultivator who survived the series of ambushes from the demon clan. Most of the North Sea's alchemists thought that it was because Daoist master Xian Sen's late-stage alchemy cultivation was so high that he didn't suffer any injuries. It wasn't because of the miraculous effect of the spiritual water pill incubating technique. Lu Ping was enlightened. So that's how it is. But Senior Liao, how much do you think this pill is worth? This thing is a treasure. A voice interrupted. Lu Ping looked at the speaker in surprise. It was a middle-aged cultivator with an imposing appearance. Brother Ari, why did you also take a fancy to this spiritual water pill incubating technique? Liao Ruanjia couldn't help but ask. The middle-aged cultivator nodded at Liao Ruanjia and smiled at Lu Ping. Lu Xiaoyu, I'm Ari Zhong. Ari Buotao is my nephew. Lu Ping thought of Ari Buotao's cross-dressing girl, but the middle-aged cultivator didn't mention it. Lu Ping hurriedly cupped his hands. So it's Senior Ari. How is brother Ari Buotao? Ari Zhong smiled bitterly. Ari Zhong smiled wryly and said, he's not doing too well. In recent years, little friend Lu and the others have made remarkable achievements in the North Sea. That nephew of mine is also someone who refuses to admit defeat. A few days ago, he also went to fight the demon race with his life, but he almost lost his life. He was hit by the strange magic of the demon race that brother Liao mentioned. Lu Ping was startled. How is brother Ari now? Ari Zhong smiled bitterly. Fortunately, this kid is still young and doesn't have to worry about his lifespan running out. However, his cultivation is almost crippled and he has no spirit. His life is no different from being dead. Originally, I was skeptical about the spiritual water pill incubating technique. This time, I came to the gathering to ask Fornax Laozu for help, but I didn't expect to run into Lu Xiaoyu. It seems that the spiritual water pill incubating technique came from Lu Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu can't just watch him die. Lu Ping couldn't care less about the joke in spiritual master Ari Zhong's last sentence. Lu Ping had worked with the Ari siblings several times and had a good relationship. In addition, the Ari family was also a major force in the North Sea with Fa Xiong Laozu overseeing it. Making friends with such a powerful force was certainly something the seniors of the sect would like to see. Lu Ping quickly took out another box from his interspatial ring and said, this water spirit meridian nourishing pellet isn't easy to concoct, so I don't have many with me. Senior Ari, please take this one. Saving brother Ari is more important. Ari Zhong's expression relaxed when he saw Lu Ping handing him the crystal box. His previous helpless expression was gone. Lu Xiaoyu is indeed impatient. However, with little friend's help, there's no need to be anxious. That kid has always been proud and arrogant. This can be considered a lesson for him to learn that there's always someone better out there. Since he won't die for the time being, it's better to let him live for a few more days to learn. Chapter 422. From Liao Ruanjia, Lu Ping had obtained enough spiritual herbs to concoct 3 batches of meridian nourishing pills, and from Ari Zhong, he obtained 18 high-grade spiritual stones. For a pill that could restore a core forging realm cultivator's cultivation, it was equivalent to giving it away for free. Liao Ruanjia and Ari Zhong were not fools. In the alchemy world, there was no reason for them to take the initiative to express their goodwill to Lu Ping. However, both of them had their own plans, and Lu Ping naturally had his own plans. Zhenling's rise was already a foregone conclusion. At this time, they needed the support of allies. Lu Ping bid farewell to the two and walked to the other side. Only then did he notice Fornax Laozu nodding at him with appreciation. His originally gloomy expression also became much better. Obviously, he had seen the transaction between Lu Ping and the Liao and Ari clan. After Lu Ping left, Ari Zhong, who had obtained the meridian nourishing pills, was in a good mood. He turned to Liao Ruanjia and said, Brother Liao, what good stuff do you have? Let me have a look. The Liao clan's alchemy skills are passed down from generation to generation. My Ari clan cannot be compared to them. Liao Ruanjia smiled faintly and said, Brother Ari must be joking. Having said that, he handed over the jade slip that he had given to Lu Ping previously. However, when he took out the jade slip, his finger pressed on it without anyone noticing. The bone-forging pill recorded at the end of the jade slip was erased. This kind of private exchange between various alchemy masters was carried out quite quickly. In just half a day's time, it was completed. Lu Ping followed Fornax Laozu into the Snow Mist Palace. Along the way, Fornax Laozu's expression was solemn, and he did not speak a word. Lu Ping also did not speak, only following behind them. Inside the Snow Mist Palace, Lu Ping followed Fornax Laozu into the palace. Tian Shui Laozu noticed that Lu Ping did not have a fierce expression like before. Instead, he looked at Fornax Laozu and asked, "How was it? What did Xianling sect's Dao Li say?" Fornax Laozu shook his head and said, "Dao Li is considered to have a good temper in Xianling sect. However, when it comes to longevity pills, he immediately turned hostile with me. There's no room for discussion." This time, Tian Shui Laozu surprisingly did not get angry. Instead, she nodded her head and said, "This is also within my expectations. After all, that year's matter was too big. Xianling sect directly lost a Laozu, causing the two sects to be in a stalemate. Now, our sect has produced two Laozu, while Xianling sect only has one Laozu. Furthermore, he was continuously defeated by those two enemies. Now, if the two sects were to have a life and death battle, I'm afraid that Xianling sect might not be our sect's opponent. Right now, they can't wait for junior brother Tiankang to die as soon as possible, so as to reduce our sect's strength. Perhaps it was because Lu Ping had helped Zhenling gain face in the North Sea Palace this morning, and even ruthlessly ridiculed Wei Shuren, the new alchemist grandmaster. Thus, Tian Shui Laozu's impression of Lu Ping had improved a lot. When she reminded Jiang Tianlin and Liu Tianling again, she no longer called Lu Ping crazy lass and bastard brat. "Mph, so what? Don't forget that time when our sect and Xianling sect had just taken back the Sunrise Island's medium-sized spiritual mine from the demon race. It had fallen into Xianling sect's hands. Although we had defeated Xianling sect, it could still be considered as an alliance." Lu Ping's face was expressionless, but his ears were perked up. He did not miss a single word that the two Laozus had said. The fact that the two Laozus did not hide anything during their conversation was already a testament to Lu Ping's current status. However, this did not mean that Lu Ping could ask about some of the sect's secrets. These things could only be collected by Lu Ping bit by bit, accumulated, organized, and judged. The two Laozus would not answer some questions for you, as they were afraid that your first impression would be the strongest and affect your judgment. When Tianlu Laozu heard Tian Shui Laozu's words, a look of hatred appeared on his face as he said, "That's right." However, even if senior brother Tian Kang has unfortunately fallen, Tianlin and the other two are not to be trifled with. When they were in the late core forging stage, they were able to kill Dao Kong together, and now they are able to fight against Dao Yang, who is in the mid-Dharma stage. In the end, it still ended in a draw. It's a pity that senior brother Tian Kang is only one step away from the mid-Dharma stage. As long as he crosses this threshold, his lifespan will increase by 200 years, and our sect will definitely be able to suppress Xianling sect in all aspects. However, it just so happened that before he could advance to the mid-Dharma stage, his lifespan was about to run out. Tian Shui Laozu shook her head and said, "Junior brother Tianlu, you have not advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, so you don't know the difference between the early and mid-Dharma stage. Don't think that those two little enemies might be able to go further than me, or even senior brother Tian Xiong in the future. However, how many years has it been since they advanced to the Dharma stage? Even if they joined forces, they might not be able to defeat Dao Yang. At most, they would be like Tianfan and I in the past, desperately trying to protect ourselves from that old man Dao Sheng's attacks. Back then, junior brother Tian Kang was only a few years behind Dao Yang, so he was one step slower in advancing to the mid-Dharma stage. If junior brother Tian Kang was also a mid-Dharma stage adept at that time, how would Dao Yang be able to force him to the point where he had to use his life force? The two Laozus sighed helplessly. They were both a little worried. Lu Ping opened his mouth and was about to say something, but unexpectedly, Tianlu Laozu saw his expression and asked, "What did you talk about with the two rascals from the Liao and Ari families today?" Liao Ruanjia and Ari Zhong were both adepts who had been cultivating for 300 to 400 years. In the North Sea, they were famous alchemy masters. However, in the eyes of Tianlu Laozu, they were all juniors. After all, once a practitioner advanced to the early Dharma stage, they would have a lifespan of at least 8 to 1,000 years. With Tianlu Laozu's years of cultivation and status, it was obvious that he was treating the two of them differently when he acted like an elder. Lu Ping did not hesitate and told them the details of the deal he had with the two of them. When Tianlu Laozu heard about the bone-forging pill, he seemed to be deep in thought. He said, "From the refining style of this pill, it really has the style of Middle Earth. Could it be that the Liao family really has some connection with Middle Earth?" Tian Shui Laozu's mouth twitched. How could there be a lack of adepts or clans from Middle Earth who fled overseas to avoid calamity? What's there to fuss about? Back then, didn't the founder of our sect, Laozu, also come from Middle Earth? However, you really dare to accept any kind of benefit. At that girl Tianling's Dharma idol gathering, you gave 3,000-year-old spirit monster peaches as a birthday gift in front of everyone, and that Liao Ruanjia immediately gave you a bone-forging Dan's pill recipe. He really doesn't hide his good intentions. Tianlu Laozu pondered and said, "Perhaps this is the Liao family's brilliance." Without Dharma idol Laozu overseeing, the Liao family still managed to survive for over 1,000 years in the Northern Sea. Naturally, the Liao family has its own outstanding points. Tian Shui Laozu felt a little heartache. Pointing at Lu Ping's nose, he asked, "Brat, to think that your teacher is called Liu Tianling. You don't even know how to extort money. Do you know how much your spiritual water meridian nourishing pill is worth? Just 3 sets of spiritual herbs and 18 high-grade spiritual stones for 2 of your pills. In the future, when your cultivation rises, how would we old fellows dare to let you be the head of the Junling family? Wouldn't you squander away all the inheritance that has been passed down for over 10,000 years?" When Tian Shui Laozu saw Lu Ping's silly smile, she showed a distressed expression as she started to calculate for him. This spiritual water meridian nourishing pill technique, in the entire Northern Sea, only you know how to do it, right? You're the only one who knows how to cure the demon race's injuries that can break a cultivator's meridians, right? Furthermore, in this period of time, the demon race frequently injured cultivators. Among the demon race cultivators, there are quite a number of them who have grasped this strange divine ability, right? What does a core forging cultivator's cultivation mean to a sect or a family? Is it something that can be exchanged for with 18 high-grade spiritual stones? Lu Ping asked carefully, "Then how many items do you want to exchange for it?" Tian Shui Laozu didn't answer Lu Ping's question. Instead, she looked at Tianlu Laozu and asked, "Junior brother Tianlu, tomorrow is the time for the treasure exchange, right? Why don't you release 1 or 2 spiritual water meridian nourishing pills? The starting price for each pill is at least 1 natural oddity." Lu Ping's silly smile froze. This Laozu was truly valiant. The moment he opened his mouth, 1 natural oddity, and that was just the starting price. Frankly speaking, the cost of concocting the spiritual water meridian nourishing pill wasn't much different from an ordinary late-stage core forging pill. It was just that using spiritual water to concoct the pill was too unimaginable. Furthermore, the effect of the pill was so effective that it gave Tian Shui Laozu the opportunity to ask for an exorbitant price. Lu Ping saw that even Tianlu Laozu's mouth twitched when he heard Tian Shui Laozu's price. However, after thinking about it, he nodded his head without any hesitation. This caused Lu Ping to feel heartache for the 2 spiritual water meridian nourishing pills that he had to exchange today. In fact, what Tian Shui Laozu said wasn't wrong at all. If they really met a late-stage core forging cultivator like Daoist Xian Sen, it would be worth it for a sect to exchange a spiritual water meridian nourishing pill for a spiritual water meridian nourishing pill. However, if it really reached that stage, Junling's sect would definitely be suppressed by the cultivators of the Northern Sea. In the end, Tianlu Laozu still spoke a few good words for Lu Ping. No matter what, the 2 sects took the initiative to express their goodwill, and little brat Lu Ping did them a favor. This is ultimately a good thing for our sect. After all, the Liao clan has over 1,000 years of alchemy heritage. They are not to be trifled with. They have some connections in the Northern Sea. As for the Ari clan, They have Fa Xiong Laozu as their leader. They have long been the target of our sect's recruitment. Giving them 2 spiritual water meridian nourishing pills is worth it. Tian Shui Laozu glanced at Lu Ping, no longer harping on this matter. Instead, she turned around and said something that shocked Lu Ping. The 5 major sects of the Eastern Sea have sent people over. A group of 10 people has arrived at Xianling sect. Tianlu Laozu's originally gloomy expression became even more unsightly. With a muffled voice, he said, "The Demons' Alliance is already a foregone conclusion. Even the people of the Eastern Sea can't sit still. Xianling sect is still the number 1 sect in the Northern Sea." Tian Shui Laozu's expression turned serious, which was rarely seen. It's because of Dao Sheng. Because of his late-stage Dharma cultivation, in the eyes of the sects of the Eastern Sea, a sect without a grand cultivator to guard it is ultimately a second-rate sect. Senior brother Tian Xiong, Tian Shui Laozu's expression was a little uneasy as she said, "It should be soon." Chapter 423. Lu Ping and Fornax Laozu were sitting cross-legged in the North Sea Palace. An alchemy grandmaster was holding something in his hand and introducing it to the master of the palace. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was watching with great interest, while Fornax Cauldron Patriarch was disdainful. Clearly, he didn't like the things displayed by the cultivators on the stage. The cultivator on the stage held a piece of high-grade mysterious grey iron in his hand. However, this mysterious grey iron was not an ordinary high-grade spiritual material. This was because mysterious grey iron was a spiritual material that was commonly used to refine high-grade pill furnaces. Therefore, it was reasonable for the mysterious grey iron to appear in the alchemist assembly. In the end, this piece of dark grey iron was traded for by a newly promoted alchemy grandmaster like Lu Ping. Seeing the surprised expression on the newly promoted alchemy grandmaster's face, it was obvious that this grandmaster didn't have a high-grade pill furnace in his possession. Next, several alchemy grandmasters took turns to show off their treasures. At the same time, they stated their intentions for the exchange. There were many kinds of treasures. Some were for pill furnaces, some for rare spirit herbs, and some for 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. As for all kinds of rare and strange fire seeds, pill furnaces, pill recipes, fire control techniques, alchemy inheritances, and so on, they gave Lu Ping a lot of insight. Just as Lu Ping was thinking about what he should show off and trade for, a cultivator who looked to be in his 50s or 60s walked up slowly and took out a black block of earth the size of a wash basin from his storage magic tool. The old cultivator said, "This is a high-grade dark-level spirit stone. I hope to trade it for a pill that can help you break through to the Dharma phase." Finally, a heaven and earth spirit treasure appeared. Moreover, it was an earth attribute heaven and earth spirit treasure that was rarely seen in the Endless Sea Islands. Moreover, it was a high-grade profound ranked heaven and earth spirit treasure. For cultivators who needed to break through to the mid-core forging realm, this was a very suitable heaven and earth spirit treasure. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. Only now did he realize that this old cultivator was actually a peak core forging stage cultivator. From the pill that he wanted to trade for, this person's golden core was at least a 6th grade. Although the alchemists present couldn't use a high-grade dark-level spirit stone, everyone had a younger generation behind them. Therefore, it attracted the attention of many alchemists present. Some of them couldn't help but move their lips, as if trying to communicate with the old cultivator on the stage. The old cultivator also listened carefully, but in the end, he regretfully refused. His face was full of regret. At this moment, Lu Ping's expression changed. He secretly patted his chest and imperceptibly. Then, like the other alchemists beside him, he carefully probed the dark jade stone in the old cultivator's hand with his divine sense. At the same time, his eyes flashed and a green light flashed across his face. Lu Ping turned to Fornax Laozu and asked in a low voice, "Uncle Master, does our sect have any pills that can help break through to the transcendent stage?" Fornax Laozu looked at Lu Ping in surprise. "You want this dark jade stone?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "Disciple has a demonic pet under me. Although it hasn't reached the core formation realm yet, earth attribute spirit items are extremely rare in the North Sea. Disciple wants to trade it for a rainy day. Fornax Laozu snorted. There are many early core forging stage cultivators in the North Sea who are stuck at a bottleneck because of spirit stones. You, on the other hand, even your pet needs to prepare for a rainy day. Hasn't your one caused you enough trouble? Lu Ping smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. Fornax Laozu said, Your one isn't simple. It has a lot to do with the fire Luan race of the East Sea. Be careful, don't let others find you. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but he immediately realized something. Lu Qin had been running around Tianling Mountain with Jiang Shenxian, so it would be strange if Zhenling's sect didn't investigate this core forging realm monster cultivator's background. In front of her avatar great ancestor, with Lu Qin's current strength, there was nothing she could hide. When he looked up, he saw that the old cultivator on the stage had a hint of joy on his face. He respectfully came before the ancestor of the Forsaken Cauldron ancestor. Under the surprised gazes of the other ancestors, he handed a piece of dark jade stone to the ancestor of the Forsaken Cauldron ancestor. The ancestor of the Forsaken Cauldron ancestor gave him a jade bottle and said, Whether or not you succeed depends on your luck. The old cultivator thanked him profusely. Fornax Laozu waved his hand and the old man hurriedly retreated. Fornax Laozu handed the dark jade stone to Lu Ping. Only then did the other sect's Laozu withdraw their puzzled gazes. However, Fornax Laozu's voice rang out in Lu Ping's ears. Little fellow, I've exchanged for the spirit water meridian nourishing pills. I've also prepared 10 furnaces of blood condensing pills for you. As for some other core forging medicinal pills, you have to refine them as soon as possible. Also, when you have time, go to the monastery to practice your sword and raise your juniors. Lu Ping bitterly smiled and nodded. There really was no way to get this spiritual item for free. Once he returned, he would be very busy. However, he didn't have time to think about that right now. It was time for Lu Ping to reveal his treasures. Lu Ping needed a lot of things, but the treasures he could take out to exchange were very few. The rest were mostly spiritual items. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't take them out in this kind of situation. After thinking about it, Lu Ping decided to keep a low profile. He had already attracted a lot of attention in this gathering, so there was no need for him to attract too much attention. Lu Ping took out 18 3,000-year-old spirit herbs. He wanted to exchange them for a wood attribute, fire attribute, or wind attribute natural treasure. If that didn't work, he could also exchange them for high-grade spirit stones. Unexpectedly, these 18 3,000-year-old spirit herbs attracted the attention of the North Sea Palace's alchemists. Someone was immediately willing to pay 18 high-grade spirit stones, but then someone else shouted out 36 high-grade spirit stones. Ever since the large spirit mine on Frost Island began to be excavated, the shortage of spirit stones in the North Sea Palace had been alleviated to a certain extent. High-grade spirit stones were also more abundant, which made these North Sea Palace alchemists feel very generous. Lu Ping didn't expect that his dozen 3,000-year-old spirit herbs would be so crazily fought over by everyone. However, he immediately understood that spirit herbs were items that could be used by everyone. They weren't like spiritual items, which not only depended on grade, but also attribute, which was really troublesome. Of course, the 3,000-year-old spirit herbs themselves were also good items that alchemists would crave for. In the end, these dozen 3,000-year-old spirit herbs were exchanged for by a Laozu of the Ocean Flame sect with a wind-like object and 18 high-grade spirit stones. Lu Ping was secretly delighted and excitedly returned to Fornax Laozu's side. However, he heard Fornax Laozu snort coldly and said, If you need a natural treasure, you can use your 3,000-year-old spirit herbs to exchange with our sect. Why give it to an outsider? Lu Ping shrugged and didn't say anything. After obtaining the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, the existence of natural treasures became a bottomless pit for Lu Ping. Currently, Lu Ping could already nurture 4 kinds of yin thunders of metal, water, earth, and ice from the Thunder Calabash. He had also collected 2 kinds of wood attribute mysterious items. Only the fire and wind attribute mysterious items were still the first kind, but now with this wind-like object, he wasn't too far away from the initial success of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash. At this time, in the North Sea Palace, There were only a few Dharma realm alchemists left who hadn't shown their treasures. This was also the climax of this alchemist gathering. After all, the wealth of Fa Xiong Laozu was not something that others could compare to. In particular, the wealth of Fa Xiong Laozu was to a certain extent the wealth of their respective sects. Fornax Laozu's face was gloomy from the beginning. Seeing that only Fa Xiong Laozu hadn't shown his treasure, he was the first to step onto the stage. Fornax Laozu reached out and slapped a jade box on the stage. He coldly said, "One spirit water meridian nourishing Dan. I don't want to talk about its effects. I'm sure everyone has heard about Nephew Shen Senator. If you want to trade, bring a natural treasure, a longevity pill recipe, a top-grade spirit stone, or at least 53,000-year-old spirit herbs. 800,000-year-old spirit herbs are also fine. However, the spirit herbs must be rare and precious. Don't try to fool me with some supplementary spirit herbs." Fornax Laozu's exorbitant demand shocked Lu Ping. Who would be willing to pay such a high price for a spirit water meridian nourishing Dan? The value of the treasure that Fornax Laozu was asking for was at least 15 times the value of the Dan itself. However, to Lu Ping's surprise, the moment Fornax Laozu's words fell, the Ling Jiyu sect's alchemy grandmaster took out a storage pouch and said that there were 800,000-year-old spirit herbs inside that he wanted to trade for this Dan. Meanwhile, Hai Yang sect's Laozu directly took out a mid-grade mystic-ranked natural treasure. However, in the end, it was still exchanged by the Shui Yang Pavilion with 3 ordinary jade-like stones. Lu Ping knew that the 3 ordinary jade-like stones were top-grade spirit stones. He had one himself. Lu Ping suddenly felt that someone was staring at him. When he turned his head, he just happened to see Liao Ruanjia and Ari Zhong nodding at Lu Ping with gratitude. Lu Ping also smiled at the two of them, but his heart was bleeding. The 2 spirit water meridian nourishing Dan that he exchanged with them was practically free. Many other cultivators also looked at Lu Ping with doubtful gazes. They seemed to be wondering if this Dan was made by Lu Ping. After all, when the North Sea Palace opened yesterday, Lu Ping had revealed his ability to refine pills with spirit water. However, the majority of people still believed that this Dan was made by Fornax Laozu. Not to mention the fact that the spirit water meridian nourishing Dan was extremely difficult to refine, the spirit water meridian nourishing Dan itself was equivalent to a late-stage core forging pill. The cultivators in the North Sea Palace did not believe that Lu Ping's alchemy skills had reached such a level. Moreover, if it was Lu Ping who refined it, then the person who showed off the treasure should be Lu Ping. After that, Fornax Laozu did not leave the stage. Instead, he took out another jade box and said, "There is one more here. The conditions remain the same. Longevity pill recipe first." The cultivators in the North Sea Palace were stunned, but they did not say anything. Fornax Laozu showing off treasures in succession was against the rules, but the rules were set by the Laozu. No one would cause trouble for the Laozu over such a trivial matter. Moreover, the spirit water meridian nourishing Dan was the only pill that could restrain the strange magical abilities of the demon cultivators. In recent years, the sects in the North Sea had fought against the demon race, and many cultivators had been destroyed by this strange magical ability. The second spirit water meridian nourishing Dan was traded by a grandmaster from the Kang Hai sect with 2 kinds of mid-grade mystic class origin treasures. The Kang Hai sect's cultivator was at the 6th-stage core forging realm and was about to advance to the late-stage core forging realm. Who would have thought that such a disaster would happen to him? Unexpectedly, after Fornax Laozu showed off 2 treasures in succession, he did not lose face. Instead, he sneered in the direction of the Xianling sect. Chapter 424. Dowli, I heard that 2 days ago, your sect's late-stage core forging realm cultivator, Wang Shufei, was also crippled by the demonic cultivator's strange divine ability. There is also a 6th-stage core forging realm cultivator named Shui Shuyun who is struggling at death's door. Don't tell me your sect doesn't want to exchange 1 or 2 meridian nourishing pills for these 2 disciples. Standing on the stage, Tianlu Laozu took out another jade box and slapped it on the table. He sneered at Dao Li Laozu, who looked a little hesitant. When the cultivators in the North Sea Palace saw Qianlu Laozu take out another meridian nourishing pill, many of them were overjoyed. However, when Qianlu Laozu turned to Dao Li Laozu, the cultivators in the North Sea Palace paled. The few cultivators who were eager to try the meridian nourishing pill immediately gave up. Dao Li Laozu looked troubled and said, "Brother Qianlu, the old man has a high-grade mystic class origin treasure and a few top-grade spirit stones. If Brother Qianlu agrees, the old man will naturally agree." Qianlu Laozu sneered and said, "Dao Li, you and I have known each other for a long time. You know very well what I need. If you take out the recipe for the 5 years longevity pill, I can even take out 3 of them, not to mention 1 meridian nourishing pill. As far as I know, your Xianling sect has an early-stage core forging realm cultivator who was injured by the demonic cultivator's strange divine ability. If our sects exchange, it will be a win-win situation." Wang Shufei also used a mid-grade Earth-class origin treasure to advance to the late-stage core forging realm. As long as his cultivation recovers, he may have a chance to advance to the 6th-stage gold core. That Shui Shuyun is Dao Yang's direct disciple. Think about it carefully. After Qianlu Laozu finished speaking, 2 identical jade boxes fell on the stone table. 3 meridian nourishing pills in total. This time, the North Sea Palace was silent. Everyone looked at Dao Li Laozu, waiting for his decision. It was no secret in the North Sea that Zhenling was collecting longevity pill recipes from all over the world. Other than Xianling sect and Zhenling, all the major sects had profited from Zhenling in the past. At the same time, they knew that Zhenling's famous Qiankang Laozu was at the end of his rope. On the other hand, Xianling sect was obviously holding on to the longevity pill recipes. They would rather see the cultivation of their 3 core forging cultivators destroyed than give Zhenling Laozu a chance to live for another 5 years. Otherwise, Qianlu Laozu wouldn't have used the opportunity to cause trouble for Xianling sect. Lu Ping couldn't help but sigh at the craftiness and ruthlessness of the older generation. Previously, the 2 Qianlu Laozu and Qianlu Laozu had met privately. After Qianlu Laozu was rejected, they immediately used this method to force Dao Li to abdicate. Now, it was up to Dao Li Laozu to react. If Dao Li Laozu's words and actions were inappropriate, even if Zhenling couldn't get the longevity pills, Dao Li Laozu would lose his reputation in Xianling sect. Perhaps, Xianling sect might even lose their morale because of this. What a vicious move. Lu Ping's face was solemn, as if he was fully supporting Qianlu Laozu's actions. At the same time, his eyes were staring fiercely at Xianling sect's side, as if he didn't mind shedding all pretense of cordiality. However, in his heart, he was calculating the chances of Qianlu Laozu's plan succeeding. Dao Li's reason was actually very simple. Xianling sect used 3 crippled core forging cultivators to exchange for Zhenling's Laozu. No matter how he looked at it, it was a good deal. However, the monster race was closing in on them. A dying Dharma adept Laozu, not to mention 5 more years of life, just 1 or 2 more years would be a great help to his sect and the North Sea's cultivation world. This was righteousness. On the other hand, Xianling sect, in order to achieve its goal, turned its disciples into tools that could be sacrificed at any time. This made them feel bitterly disappointed. This was benevolence. However, in recent years, Xianling sect had been continuously challenged by the rising Zhenling. Now that they finally had a chance to weaken Zhenling, how could Xianling sect let it go? 8 Dharma adepts Laozu and 3 mid-Dharma adepts. How terrifying was this force in the North Sea? The Haiyan sect and the Shuiyang Pavilion had always been ranked behind Zhenling. Each sect only had 5 Dharma Laozu cultivators, and only 1 or 2 of them had reached the mid-Dharma stage. Just as Dao Li Laozu was thinking about something with a dark expression, Wei Shuren, who was next to Dao Li Laozu, suddenly smiled sinisterly and said, "Qianlu, don't even think about it. A longevity elixir is a treasure, not to mention a 5-year longevity elixir. Back then, Master Daokong Laozu's death had something to do with you, Zhenling. This time, Daokong deserved to die. He only died after 50 to 60 years, and he got off lightly." Qianlu Laozu and Dao Li Laozu's expressions changed, and they shouted at the same time, "Shut up. The two Dharma Laozu's power was so great that Wei Shuren's face turned pale under the pressure of the two Laozu's aura. His eyes were still sinister, but there was a hint of guilt in them. The other masters of alchemy and Laozu all had calm expressions on their faces. They were as still as wooden statues, but in private, they had already exploded. Dao Kong's death in the past was Zhenling's doing? So, it wasn't some ancient ruin exploration. I knew it. How could an ancient ruin kill a Dharma Laozu? But how could Xianling's sect swallow this insult for 50 to 60 years? Dao Sheng Laozu isn't someone to be trifled with. I get it, I get it. Do you still remember the fight over the spirit mine on Rising Sun Island between Zhenling and Xianling sect 50-something years ago? That's not right. At that time, Dao Kong Laozu didn't join the battle. That's right. Why didn't he join the battle? That was the final battle between the Dharma Laozu of the two sects. If he didn't go, it could only mean that he died. During the battle on Rising Sun Island, 11 Laozu fought in a chaotic battle. Not only was Dao Sheng Laozu among them, there were also 5 Laozu in the middle stage of the Dharma realm. How did Rising Sun Island end up in Xianling sect's hands without suffering too much damage after the battle, and then news of Dao Kong Laozu's death spread? That makes sense. Looks like both sects were very secretive about that battle in the past. There might be something fishy going on. Based on what that idiot Wei Shuren said, it seems like Zhenling's Tian Kang Laozu also lost his life in that battle. That's right. That's right. Tian Shui and Tian Fan blocked Dao Sheng. Tian Xiong and Dao Quan have always been enemies. Tian Kang was the 4th strongest expert in Zhenling's sect at that time, so the one who blocked Dao Yang must have been him. Dao Yang is a mid-Dharma adept, so he must have used a method to deplete his lifespan to block Dao Yang. That's why Zhenling's sect has been trying so hard to find all kinds of longevity elixirs for the past 50 to 60 years. Dao Li Laozu wanted nothing more than to slap Wei Shuren, who was standing next to him, to death. This incompetent bastard. Initially, Dao Li's hesitation could still be interpreted as him weighing the lives of his 3 disciples. Even if he gave up in the end, it was because he had no choice but to do so. Wei Shuren's words, however, were clearly telling the North Sea that even if Xianling's sect had to sacrifice the lives of their disciples, they would not let Zhenling Laozu live for another 5 years. The same thing, the same goal, but with a different cover, the meaning expressed was completely different. Seeing this, Tianlu Laozu could only calculate that Xianling's sect did not care about the lives of their disciples. Although he sighed inwardly because he did not get the longevity pill recipe, he did not want Xianling's sect to have an easy time. Thus, he said, "All right, old man understands your sect's intention." This was akin to nailing Xianling's sect's reputation of not caring about the lives of their disciples to the pillar of shame in the North Sea's cultivation world. Dao Li Laozu's expression changed. Suddenly, he said, "It is not impossible for your sect to exchange for our longevity pill recipe. What are your conditions? Speak." Tianlu Laozu stopped in his tracks and stared fixedly at Dao Li Laozu. Lu Ping's spirit was lifted, and he looked at Dao Li Laozu. Wei Shuren, who was standing beside Dao Li Laozu, looked anxious, as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Obviously, he was secretly restrained by someone, but no one knew if it was Dao Li Laozu or Tianlu Laozu. "Wonder Dew. Our sect wants the Wonder Dew." Dao Li Laozu stared fixedly at Tianlu Laozu and uttered these few words. The North Sea Palace was in an uproar. Many cultivators looked at each other, trying to figure out what the Wonder Dew was. Lu Ping was also confused. When he looked up, he saw that the Dharma adepts of each sect were looking at Tianlu Laozu on the stage with surprised expressions. Obviously, these Laozu adepts knew what the Wonder Dew was. Lu Ping looked up at Tianlu Laozu and saw Tianlu Laozu shaking his head. "Dao Li, I, Zhenling, do not have the Wonder Dew. The old man also knows where your guess came from. I thought you would ask for the spirit-forging pill from our sect, but I didn't expect you to ask for this. Does this mean that your sect already has the recipe for the spirit-forging pill and is planning to refine it yourself?" Tianlu Laozu's words were like a fuse that ignited a firecracker. No one knew about the Wonder Dew, But who didn't know about the famous spirit forging pill? The spirit forging pill was a pill that could increase the rank of a golden core. It could be consumed by a late core forging cultivator, but it was a true core forging pill. Years ago, when Lu Ping brought back 8 spirit forging pills from Failing Island, the shock it brought to Guo Xianshan and Liu Shenling was still vivid in Lu Ping's mind. Moreover, as his cultivation and experience increased, it became more and more unforgettable. Compared to the spirit forging pill, the pill that Tianlu Laozu used to exchange for the amulet stone, which was said to be able to help a cultivator reach the Dharma manifestation stage, was nothing compared to the spirit forging pill. Increasing the rank of a golden core not only meant that a cultivator's chances of advancing to the Dharma manifestation stage increased greatly, but more importantly, it meant that the cultivator would be able to go further in the Dharma manifestation stage in the future and become stronger. Lu Ping's heart sank, and he immediately had a guess. Sure enough, Dao Li Laozu's deep laughter rang out. Spirit forging pill, even in the Failing sect back then, there were only a few of them, and they were all carried by Laozu of the Failing sect. Not to mention that you, Zhenling, couldn't have collected all of them. Even if you did, how many could you have? And why did you only use it now? After Jiang Tianlin advanced to the Dharma manifestation stage, why was he able to defeat the 2 famous cultivators who were on the same level as him back then, the Golden Dragon Island Master and our martial nephew Feng? Why was Liu Tianling able to reach the Dharma manifestation stage in such a short period of time, and was able to defeat martial nephew Feng, whose strength was far above his? Then why was Guo Xianshan, Chu Shencheng, and Li Shenyin able to reach the golden core stage so quickly and almost at the same time, becoming peak core forging cultivators? Fornax Laozu didn't say anything, he just listened quietly. Dao Li Laozu continued, even if the spirit forging pill is occasionally circulated in the Fei Ling sect, there shouldn't be so many. Not to mention that the Fei Ling sect has been destroyed for more than 4,000 years, even if the spirit forging pill is circulated, how can it not lose its medicinal properties? You must know that the higher the rank of the pill, the harder it is to preserve its medicinal properties. Dao Li Laozu saw that many cultivators of the North Sea Palace were listening to his deduction, and many cultivators secretly nodded in agreement with his judgment, so he said, this can only mean that you, Zhenling, constantly have spirit forging pills, and the spirit forging pill was recently refined, so you, Zhenling, must also have the recipe for the spirit forging pill. In this way, the Wonder Dew, the most important ingredient in refining the spirit forging pill, is naturally in your hands. Chapter 425. Dao Li Laozu's counterattack came so quickly. In just a moment, Tianlu Laozu's attempt to force Shenling sect to abdicate had turned into Dao Li Laozu's questioning of Zhenling. The spirit forging pill. That was a spirit forging pill that could raise the rank of a golden pill, and there was also the mysterious Wonder Jade Nectar that only the few alchemy grandmasters present, Transcendence Laozu, knew about. Lu Ping didn't know what the Wonder Jade Nectar was, but he was very familiar with the spirit forging pill. But now, Lu Ping at least knew that the Wonder Jade Nectar was the most important ingredient in refining the spirit forging pill. Although Dao Li Laozu's speculation made sense, Lu Ping was very clear about Zhenling's spirit forging pill. 8 spirit forging pills were stored in a jade essence bottle. Lu Ping found it in the underground cave on Fei Ling Island. Jiang and Liu must have used the power of the spirit forging pill to advance to the transcendent stage. Chu Shencheng and the others might have done the same. However, if Zhenling had already mastered the recipe and could refine the spirit forging pill by himself, Lu Ping didn't believe it. Lu Ping was one of the 5 alchemy grandmasters of Zhenling. Although he didn't usually go to the elixir pavilion, he was very clear about Zhenling's alchemy skills. If the sect had really obtained the recipe for the spirit forging pill, a grandmaster like Lu Ping would definitely know about it. At least that spiritual master Shen Jing had obtained a spirit forging pill from his master for research, but after researching for more than 20 years, he still didn't find anything. Tianlu Laozu waited for Dao Li Laozu to finish speaking before he slowly stood up and said, Dao Li, do you know about the Wonder Jade Essence bottle? Dao Li Laozu was startled when he heard Fornax Laozu's words. However, he did not reply. Fornax Laozu unhurriedly said, The wondrous jade essence bottle itself is a spiritual level treasure. If you use it to store spirit forging pills, do you think a mere 4,000 years can make a few spirit forging pills lose their effectiveness? Meanwhile, the Mistwater Pavilion's Fa Xiong, Laozu, said, the myriad wonder chalcedony bottle is indeed capable of preserving the medicinal properties of a medicinal pill for thousands of years without losing, and using it to store a spirit forging pill isn't considered to be a reckless waste of God's given gifts. But where did this myriad wonder chalcedony bottle come from? Fornax Laozu took out a wondrous jade essence bottle. Lu Ping recognized that it was the wondrous jade essence bottle that Lu Ping had brought out from Failing Island all those years ago. However, he didn't expect that this wondrous jade essence bottle was actually a spiritual level treasure. Lu Ping cursed in his heart. He felt that the reward given by the sect at that time was too little. But then he remembered that he was only a third-layer blood condensation realm minor repairs at that time. Even if a top-grade treasure was given to Lu Ping, he still needed to have the strength to receive it. Otherwise, a mid-grade mystic grade soul nourishing wouldn't have been enough for Lu Ping to hide it for so many years. Fornax Laozu casually threw the wondrous jade essence bottle to the Mistwater Pavilion's Fa Xiong, Laozu, who had just spoken. This Laozu stretched out his hand to catch the wondrous jade essence bottle, and his eyes immediately lit up. He clicked his tongue and said, "It really is the myriad wonder chalcedony bottle. This item hasn't appeared in the North Sea for many years." As he spoke, this Laozu opened the lid of the wondrous jade essence bottle and sniffed it. Then, he closed his eyes as if he was recalling something. After a moment, he opened his eyes and said, "Yes, there is indeed the aura of the spirit forging pill in this bottle. I, Laozu, have seen some records about the spirit forging pill in an ancient book. This wondrous jade essence bottle definitely once contained the spirit forging pill." When this Laozu finished speaking, he handed the wondrous jade essence bottle to the next Laozu. The wondrous jade essence bottle passed through the hands of the other Laozu, then returned to Fornax Laozu. The dozen or so alchemy masters in the North Sea Palace stared at it eagerly, but they didn't have the qualifications to touch the most ideal treasure for alchemists to store precious pills. After Fornax Laozu put away the wondrous jade essence bottle, he laughed at himself and said, "I found the spirit forging pill on Failing Island, but I didn't find the recipe. As for the wonder dew, I, Zhenling, haven't been lucky enough to find it." The spirit forging pill was the best pill in the Failing sect back then. Even with all the power of the Failing sect, they might not even have a few. Usually, it is carried by the few Laozu in the sect, but this wondrous jade essence bottle can obviously contain no less than 5 pills. How is this possible? The one who spoke was Wei Shuren. It seemed that he had regained a lot of his rationality. Fornax Laozu glanced at him and said, "Who knows? Maybe this wondrous jade essence bottle belongs to Jiao Yuqiang." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. This was the third time Lu Ping had heard someone mention the name Jiao Yuqiang. That's impossible. Wei Shuren seemed to have grasped something, and his slightly crazed demeanor from before reappeared. He said, "Jiao Yuqiang was surrounded and killed by 2 Dharma adepts. How could he have left behind anything?" "Surrounded and killed?" Fornax Laozu's lips curled into a mocking smile as he said, "They surrounded him, but I don't know if they killed him or not." Wei Shuren was still angry and wanted to say something, but to his surprise, Dao Laozu said, "That's right. One of our sect's Laozu participated in the siege of Jiao Yuqiang." Jiao Yuqiang did escape back to Failing Mountain, but he had been seriously injured by the Laozu and was on the verge of death. There was no way he could have survived. Moreover, the island sealing formation on Failing Island was activated at that time, and the entire island was on the verge of sinking, so we didn't look for his body. The wondrous jade bottle. Jiao Yuqiang once refined a few of these jade bottles. Fornax Laozu and Dao Laozu's guesses were full of loopholes, especially when Fornax Laozu mentioned the name Jiao Yuqiang. For some reason, the North Sea Palace's Laozu nodded in agreement. Although Dao Laozu's face was gloomy, he didn't say anything else. The North Sea Palace was silent for a moment. Then, Sea Flame Sect's Laozu turned to Dao Laozu and said, "Brother Dao Li, does this mean that your sect really obtained the recipe for the spirit forging pill?" Did you get it from Fei Ling Island? Dao Laozu's face was solemn. He shook his head and said, "No, it was sent by the people of the East Sea. They found Zhongshuan Laozu's cave a few years ago. However, this pill recipe is not complete. It only records the spirit herbs needed for refining the pill and some other things to take note of. The specific refining method is not recorded." Lu Ping saw that the other Dharma manifestation stage masters were indifferent and didn't show any reaction to the arrival of the East Sea cultivators. Obviously, the Laozu present had already received the news, and Dao Laozu didn't deliberately hide it. "Brother Dao Li, do you think the people of the East Sea didn't get the pill recipe, or did they deliberately give your sect an incomplete pill recipe with ulterior motives?" Dao Laozu shook his head and said, "The pill recipe can't be fake. They can't fool me. Brother Dao Li, do you know the purpose of the people from the East Sea?" Blue Sea sect's Laozu couldn't help but ask. Dao Laozu said, "The overseas demon clans have already formed an alliance. The East Sea cultivators naturally can't sit still. This time, they are here to help the overseas human cultivators to fight against the demon clans. The leader is a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator from the Crystal Palace. Following him are 5 late core forging stage and 5 mid-core forging stage cultivators from the 5 major sects. Our sect is only the first stop. Later on, these 11 people will visit the other sects." After the dispute between Tianlu Laozu and Dao Laozu, the following bright treasure trade fair became dull. The enlightened masters Laozu of the various sects seemed to have some ulterior motives and hurriedly exchanged a few treasures. This time, the North Sea Pill Masters gathering came to an end. However, after the gathering ended, a few cultivators from the sects found Tianlu Laozu in private. Both sides had a secret discussion. Tianlu Laozu's gloomy expression finally relaxed after not being able to exchange for the longevity pill recipe. Without guessing, Lu Ping knew that these cultivators came for the Spirit Stone Meridian Nourishing Pill. Moreover, they were ruthlessly extorted by Tianlu Laozu. When Lu Ping followed Tianlu Laozu back to the Snow Mist Palace, the first thing he saw was Tian Shui Laozu's gloomy expression. Obviously, Tian Shui Laozu already knew everything that had happened in the North Sea Palace. Tianlu Laozu sighed and said, "All my efforts were in vain. I was almost tricked by that old brat Dao Li. I had no choice but to reveal the 1,000 Wonder Jade Essence bottle." Tian Shui Laozu said coldly, "The various sects are not that stupid. It is said that the spiritual forging pills recipe was not recorded down. Instead, it was passed down verbally by a few important figures of the Fei Ling sect. I believe that all the sects know about it." Tianlu Laozu nodded his head and said, "Senior sister, you mean to say that the incomplete recipe of the spiritual forging pill that was sent by the various sects in the Eastern Sea was passed down by Zhongshen Laozu?" Tian Shui Laozu nodded her head and said, "Zhongshen Laozu fled to the Eastern Sea with the intention of restoring his sect. How could he not pay attention to a top-grade spiritual pill like the spiritual forging pill? However, he is after all a blacksmith and not a master alchemist. Thus, the recipe of the spiritual forging pill was not passed down to him. However, with his status, it is not difficult for him to know some of the spiritual herbs needed to refine the spiritual forging pill." However, Tian Shui Laozu paused for a moment and her face turned cold again. "We cannot give up on the matter of collecting the recipe of the longevity pill. Xian Ling sect cannot be counted on. They would rather destroy the cultivation of their 3 core forging realm cultivators and exhaust their lifespan than to exchange the recipe with us. However, after this group of people from the Eastern Sea goes to Xian Ling sect, they might come to Zhenling. At that time, we will see if we can get any ideas from them, especially the cultivators from the Crystal Palace. The Eastern Sea Crystal Palace even has a 10-year longevity pill. Of course, we don't even need to think about it. As long as we can get a 5-year longevity pill recipe, it will be enough." Junior brother Tian Kang's days are getting shorter and shorter. Tianlu Laozu nodded his head. Tian Shui Laozu then looked at Lu Ping with a trace of admiration in his eyes. He said, "Brat, this time, although you did not manage to exchange for the longevity pill recipe, you did humiliate a Xian Ling sect alchemist at the entrance of the Northern Sea Palace. Even though Wei Shuren is a glutton, it is still a good thing. I, Laozu, am a man of my words. I will let you pick a treasure. After saying that, Tian Shui Laozu waved his hand and a door appeared in front of him. It was similar to the method Jiang Qianlin Laozu used to capture Lu Ping and bring him to the Xiao Yaro Palace. Grand Marshal Uncle, Lu Ping said with some embarrassment, actually, this disciple also has the recipe for the 5-year longevity pill. Chapter 426. For some unknown reason, Tianlu Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu didn't have the expression of joy that Lu Ping had imagined. They just stared at Lu Ping with an ominous glint in their eyes. Clearly, they were suppressing their anger. Tianlu Laozu didn't say anything while Tian Shui Laozu frowned. In the end, he didn't say anything. Why didn't you say so earlier? Are you coveting the treasures in Laozu's hands? Lu Ping sighed inwardly. This time, he really didn't say it at the right time. Others had racked their brains but failed to obtain it. Yet, he didn't take it out. It was inevitable that others would criticize him. However, this item was obtained by him. Even if he didn't take it out, what could others say? Thus, he didn't mind and said, "Disciple has long wanted to say it, but I didn't have the chance yesterday. If it wasn't for teacher telling disciple about this matter, disciple wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to find this pill formula." Lu Ping was very familiar with lying. When the two Laozu heard that it was Liu Qianling Laozu who specifically asked Lu Ping to find it, they looked at each other and saw a trace of gratification in each other's eyes. Thus, Tianlu Laozu said, "Bring the pill formula over to the old man to take a look." Lu Ping respectfully handed over a 5 years longevity pill formula to Tianlu Laozu. With a thought, Tianlu Laozu already checked the contents of the pill formula. After a moment, Tianlu Laozu put down the jade slip with the pill formula with a calm expression. Tian Shui Laozu, who was beside him, was somewhat impatient as she asked, "How is it? The pill formula can still be used." Tianlu Laozu replied calmly, "Not bad. It's not the same as the previous pill formula. It can still be used." Tian Shui Laozu's face lit up with joy as she said, "Good, good." Although Tianlu Laozu was still as calm as before, Lu Ping could tell from Tianlu Laozu's grip on the jade slip that Tianlu Laozu's heart wasn't calm. Heavenly Snow Ancestor looked at Lu Ping and said with a smile, "Little sly fox, your cunning skills are indeed inherited from that little girl Liu Qianling. But you're still far from her level. Fine, I'll keep my word. Go ahead and choose your treasures, but don't think of taking too many. 3 is 3. Heavenly Snow Ancestor nodded and said, "All right, I'll keep my word." Finished speaking, without waiting for Lu Ping to react, the black door in front of Lu Ping swallowed Lu Ping in a single gulp. After Lu Ping was taken away by Tian Shui Laozu, Tian Shui Laozu turned to Tianlu Laozu and said, "I didn't expect this kid to have so many treasures in his hands." The title of treasure boy in his early years didn't disgrace him at all. The Forsaken Cauldron Ancestor faintly said, "There is nothing special about this kid's growth. His achievements are his own hard work, and the treasures he possesses were also earned by himself. Even if we know that he has something we need, how could we open our mouths and ask for it? Since he can take it out himself, it shows that his feelings for the sect are very deep. The further a cultivator walks in the cultivation world, the colder their heart becomes. This is something that can't be helped. With this kid's character, if he can grow up smoothly in the future, no matter if he stands in front of the stage or behind the scenes, it will be 100 benefits and no harm to the sect." Tian Shui Laozu nodded and said, "Shen Feng also told me about some of this kid's matters in the Eastern Sea. I heard that in the perished secret territory, there's a faction that he runs that has entered the eyes of the Northern Alliance. In the past, because of Xuanqin's matter, Shen Feng didn't like Tianlin and Tianling very much. Who would have thought that he would place so much importance on this kid? This really surprised me." Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, "I've also heard about this matter. It's said that Tian Xiong Laozu even met this kid because of this. I also heard that this kid learned the Bell Cauldron pill from Xuanqin's disciple and was lucky enough to refine one. It can be said that he saved Shen Feng's life." Tian Shui Laozu also said, "That year, Shen Feng was depressed because of Xuanqin's matter. After being attacked by Tianfan, he finally pulled himself together. However, this kid brought back the spirit forging pill from Fei Ling Island. Originally, Shen Feng was supposed to have one, but he rejected it. Previously, when Shen Feng went to the Eastern Sea, it was with this kid's help that he obtained a 5,000-year-old heavenly wind leaf. Originally, I was wondering if Shen Feng would be able to condense a 7th-grade golden core. Now that I think about it, his achievements should not be any lower than Shen Cheng and Shen Shan. Tianlu Laozu smiled and said, a 5,000-year-old heavenly wind leaf is not that easy to refine. If it is successful, even if Shen Feng's strength cannot be compared to Feng Shutao's, he should still be above Shen Shan and Shen Cheng's. I've already ordered Shen Jing to send the last spirit forging pill over to him, strictly ordering him to refine the heavenly wind leaf as soon as possible after consuming it. Tian Shui Laozu's eyes lit up and said, Junior brother, you've put in a lot of effort. However, isn't that spirit forging pill left for martial nephew Shen Jing to research on the spirit forging pill's formula? Tianlu Laozu snorted coldly and didn't say anything. Tian Shui Laozu also didn't ask anymore. The two of them were silent for a while in the Snow Mist Palace. Tianlu Laozu then said, how should we deal with the envoy from the Eastern Sea this time? Tian Shui Laozu smiled and said, what else can we do? The moment they came to the Northern Sea, they went to Shenling sect and gave us a lot of benefits. We, the Zhenling sect, are naturally envious. Naturally, we want to get some benefits from the rich and overbearing Eastern Sea Daoist. I think the other sects in the Northern Sea have the same idea. However, Shenling sect is the #1 sect in the Northern Sea, and Dao Sheng Laozu is the only late Dharma adept in the Northern Sea. The first stop of the envoy from the Eastern Sea is Shenling sect. Therefore, the sects in the Northern Sea will naturally follow Shenling sect's lead. Tianlu Laozu smiled knowingly and said, that's right. With the acknowledgement of the Eastern Sea's great sect, I think the entire Shenling sect should be in high spirits. After a while, Tianlu Laozu opened his mouth again and said, Senior sister, is there any news from Senior Tianxiang recently? Tian Shui Laozu shook her head seriously and said, ever since the last time Senior Tianxiang arranged a lot of things in the perished mystery land, there has been no news from him. However, before he went into closed-door training, he seemed to have found Shen Qin. A few days ago, there was news that a pill formula from the Eastern Sea would be sent over. It is also a 5-year longevity pill formula. It should be from Xuanqin's hands. Tianlu Laozu smiled happily and said, it must have been hard on this child. This time, with these 2 5-year longevity pill formulas, if the entire sect were to use the strength of the entire sect to refine all the longevity pills that we have collected previously, it should be able to save up 30 years of life for Senior Tiankang. With this 30 years of life as the price, Senior Tiankang can advance to the mid-Dharma stage and gain an additional 200 years of life in one go. By then, Shenling sect will really be suppressed by our sect. Tian Shui Laozu also looked a little excited and said, this plan has been planned by us for 50 years after Junior Tiankang was seriously injured. As long as Junior Tiankang can advance to the mid-Dharma stage, everything will be worth it. Tianlu thought for a moment and asked again, Senior sister, so many years have passed. Senior Tianxiang's previous plan, is it to bring Shen Qin back? Tian Shui Laozu shook her head and said, this Senior Tianxiang did not say it clearly. Back then, Shen Lin, Shen Ling, and Shen Qin were 3 people that even we could not control in the sect. However, these 3 bastards were all very respectful to Senior Tianxiang. More than 50 years ago, after that incident, Shen Qin and Shen Ling could not coexist in the sect anymore. Shen Qin left in a fit of anger. Now, it seems like she was also plotted against by someone else. However, after that, Senior Tianxiang went to the perished mystery land to manage. Now that I think about it, Senior Tianxiang must have already seen through this matter decades ago and set up a plan. Previously, there was news from the Eastern Sea that Shen Qin might have also advanced to the Dharma stage. If that is the case, once Shen Qin returns and Junior Tiankang recovers from his injuries, his cultivation will improve. If that is the case, even if Senior Tianxiang, Shenling sect will not dare to attack our sect. Once Senior Tianxiang succeeds, the Northern Sea will really be under our control. The black door flashed and disappeared. Lu Ping had already appeared safely in the Snow Mist Palace. Tian Shui Laozu and Tian Xiong Laozu had already stopped chatting. Tian Shui Laozu smiled and said, "Brat, what good things have you brought? Show them to me." Lu Ping listened to the martial granduncle's teasing tone and felt helpless. He thought to himself, if this martial granduncle was a man, then he'd be a real troublemaker in the cultivation world. No wonder he was sent to Huanyu Island to wrangle with the old foxes from the other sects. Lu Ping thought to himself, no wonder he was sent to Huanyu Island to wrangle with the old foxes from the other sects. If it wasn't because this Laozu had achieved transcendence and wanted to put on the airs of a senior, Lu Ping would have already been beaten up badly. Thus, he smiled and said, "Senior Granduncle, this disciple was searching for treasures in the spatial ring that you opened up. Don't tell me you don't know." Tian Shui Laozu frowned and scolded, "You little bastard, why are you talking so much nonsense?" "Laozu, I was just discussing the sect's matters with your senior granduncle Tianlu. Why would I pay attention to your little quarrel?" "Laozu, I wanted to give you something good. If you don't take it out, then forget it." Helpless, Lu Ping could only take out the 3 treasures that he found in Tian Shui Laozu's spatial ring. "Ian, brat, you do have some foresight. Spiritual gathering pearl? I heard that you opened up a small island in the outer endless sea and became the island lord. On that island, there were 3 small spiritual veins. One of them was even used by a clan that belonged to our sect." Lu Ping smiled calmly and said, "That's just a rumor. Other than one spiritual vein that was found in a cave belonging to a demon cultivator in the outer endless sea, the rest were nurtured by the spiritual gathering pearls that disciple found during his travels." Tian Shui Laozu looked at Lu Ping with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. He didn't pursue the matter any further. Lu Ping was also calm and composed, as if he wasn't afraid of any slanderous accusations. Tianlu Laozu picked up one of the jade boxes and opened it. Inside was a black inner core. Tianlu Laozu frowned and said, "Mystic tortoise golden core? What are you using this for?" Lu Ping explained, "Disciple has a demon tortoise under me. Its cultivation has reached the 9th layer of blood condensation realm. Disciple is also preparing for it to advance to the core forging realm." Tian Shui Laozu inadvertently glanced at the black and swarthy mystic tortoise core and said, "This is a first-layer core forging demon tortoise that I killed during my travels in the Southern Sea. The mystic tortoise is considered a high-grade race within the Southern Sea tortoise race. Although it doesn't have an inherited bloodline like Ba Gui, it's still not weak." The third item was a wood elemental natural oddity. It looked like several twists and turns of its own. Tian Shui Laozu couldn't help but ask, "Little fellow, you're really strange. Although my spatial ring doesn't contain any rare treasures, there are still a few natural treasures and spiritual treasures. Even some divine abilities and secret techniques, spiritual pills, and secret medicines are much stronger than these. Why are you not interested in them?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "Disciple Laozu's collection has already dazzled Disciple. I'm gasping in amazement. I'm almost dazzled by the number of treasures I've collected. However, after much consideration, Disciple still decided to pick the ones that I can use now. Although the other things are valuable, they aren't of much help to Disciple." Chapter 427. In Junling, earth-ranked and above heaven and earth spiritual items, as well as other similar treasures, if one wanted to bestow it to their disciples, they would need at least 2 to 3 Transcendence Laozu's approval. Tian Shui Laozu had agreed to bestow some benefits to Lu Ping, but it was in her own name. Thus, even if Tian Shui Laozu might have even better treasures in her possession, and they weren't from the sect, she wouldn't take them out for Lu Ping to choose from. As for the few mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual items, Lu Ping really didn't fancy them. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "Grand Marshal Uncle, actually this disciple still has some treasures that I fancy in the treasury. I wonder if this disciple can use other items to exchange for them." "Oh." Tian Shui Laozu had an interested expression as she said, "What good stuff do you have? Take it out and let me have a look." Lu Ping flipped through the storage ring in his hand before taking out a piece of chalcedony. The moment he took it out, the entire snow mist palace immediately turned cold. Not bad. Tian Shui Laozu's eyes lit up as she said, "This is a mid-grade mystic rank cold ice pith. From the looks of it, it has been around for thousands of years. Our sect has a few initial stage core forging cultivators who practice ice attribute cultivation arts who have reached the threshold to advance to the middle stage. Your spiritual item came at the right time. Tell me, what did you fancy earlier?" Lu Ping knew that Tian Shui Laozu was a great master who practiced ice attribute cultivation arts in their sect. He purposely took out this cold ice pith because he knew that Tian Shui Laozu would definitely be interested in it. A mid-grade mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual item was considered not bad for ordinary initial stage core forging cultivators. However, Lu Ping didn't fancy it. Even though Lu Ping had an ice snake among his samling subordinates, if the green sea snake were to use a mid-grade mystic rank heaven and earth spiritual item to advance to the middle stage, it would be a waste. Lu Ping calmly passed the spiritual item to Tian Shui Laozu before saying, "This disciple saw that there is a wind seed in Laozu's treasury. This wind seed is useful to this disciple. I hope Laozu can part with it." Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, a small whirlwind-like wind seed appeared in front of Lu Ping. Traces of wind scattered around the wind seed, causing the temperature around the wind seed to drop even faster. It was to the point where frost was about to form. Tian Shui Laozu said, "Although this wind seed is a wind attribute heaven and earth spiritual item, it was obtained by me, Laozu, from the northern ice plains. The northern ice plains has been affected by the harsh cold all year round. When this wind seed is used, the cold wind is bone-piercing. Although it is considered a high-quality heaven and earth spiritual item, it is still lacking when compared to this cold ice pith. Brat, do you have anything else that you value?" Lu Ping already knew this would happen. Thus, he nodded his head and smiled. This disciple has taken a liking to a piece of crystal jade. Lu Ping was still unable to see how Tian Shui Laozu moved, and a piece of crystal-like object appeared in his hand. He said, "A second-grade water attribute mutated spiritual material. This is an extremely good item. It is comparable to those third-grade spiritual materials. The value of these two items added together is comparable to that cold ice pith. Brat, do you still need anything else? The old man also has a few heaven and earth spiritual items here. If you are able to exchange for that indigo spiritual fire, the old man will let you choose any of the heaven and earth spiritual items here." Tianlu Laozu knew that Lu Ping was searching for all sorts of heaven and earth spiritual items. Previously, Tianjiang Laozu had used the Eastern Purple Chi Flame to exchange for his profound sky spiritual fire, as well as the 3,000-year-old spiritual grass in the Northern Sea Palace. Thus, when he saw that Lu Ping was actually willing to take out a heaven and earth spiritual item to exchange for these items, Tianlu Laozu immediately shifted his attention to Lu Ping's high-grade profound spiritual item, indigo spiritual fire. The indigo spiritual fire was the most suitable profound spiritual fire for alchemy. Tianlu Laozu knew very well that if an early-stage core forging disciple used this fire to advance to the mid-stage, not only would it greatly benefit their alchemy skills, but it would also be possible for them to achieve a 6th-grade golden core and break through to the transcendent stage in the future. Lu Ping's heart moved. Now in the 7 Thunder Gem Calabash, 3 heaven and earth spiritual items of the 6 attributes of metal, wood, water, earth, wind, and ice were all gathered. There was only 1 heaven and earth spiritual item of the fire attribute left. Tianlu Laozu was the sect's transcendent stage alchemy grandmaster. How could he lack all kinds of fire seeds? Presumably, Lu Ping did not have to use the indigo spiritual fire. Lu Ping also had the soul wood and the Ming water of the mid-grade profound spiritual items. As long as he took out any of them, he could immediately exchange for 2 kinds of heaven and earth spiritual fire seeds. However, after thinking about it, Lu Ping still refused and said, "Thank you, Laozu, but I have nothing else I need at the moment." The 7 Thunder Gem Calabash could be said to be second only to Lu Ping's own bloodline. The secret of the 12 natal Gentian pearls and the 9,000 years old white jade lotus flower in which the golden core was stored was even higher than Lu Ping's smelting of the Shenyuan heavy water to advance to the mid-core forging stage and the cultivation technique North Sea wave listening art. Lu Ping was not willing to let others associate the Seven Thunder Gem calabash because of the heaven and earth spiritual item. This kind of treasure was always coveted. Because of its illustrious reputation, it was the most precious treasure in the hands of the seventh patriarch, Peng Daoren. Therefore, in the cultivation world, it had the reputation of being the first divine artifact. Unfortunately, after Peng Daoren, there was no other cultivator in the cultivation world who could refine the Seven Thunder Gem calabash to its peak. Tianlu Laozu nodded his head regretfully. Tian Shui Laozu laughed and scolded, "Little fox." Then, he no longer cared about him. After bidding farewell to the two Laozu, Lu Ping left the Snow Mist Palace. Thinking that he had yet to tour the Huanyu Island, now that he had some free time, he might as well take a stroll around the city square. Ever since Lu Ping became a master alchemist, especially after he returned from the Eastern Sea, Lu Ping rarely went to the city square to purchase spiritual herbs without restraint. This was because as the master alchemist of the sect, there was basically no need for Lu Ping to do it himself. The sect would send a large amount of spiritual herbs to Lu Ping. This was the advantage of having the backing of a great sect. The scale of Huanyu Island's city square was very large. There were 3 streets in each direction. The city square was also filled with cultivators, making it very lively. Lu Ping excitedly began to purchase spiritual herbs without restraint. Spiritual herbs that were more than 500 years old, especially those that could be used to concoct the blood condensation pill, were all bought by Lu Ping with a large amount of spiritual stones. As for the 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs, although Huanyu Island was the most famous cultivators' city square in the Northern Sea, there weren't many 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs in the various shops. However, Lu Ping didn't mind. He would buy as many as he could. After half a day, although Lu Ping had some harvests, he became dispirited. Originally, Lu Ping still had the thought of picking up some leftovers and seeing if he could find some good items that could make his eyes light up. However, it was clear that luck couldn't always be on one person. Lu Ping's mind raced and he suddenly thought of the mortal market. It was a place where all kinds of strange things could be found. Although most of the things in the market were fake, it depended on the cultivator's eyesight. Perhaps one of the things that looked like a piece of junk could actually be a rare treasure. Lu Ping walked around here and there, heading towards the northern side of the city square. The mortal market was not as clean and tidy as the city square. This was a place where all sorts of good and bad people mixed together. There were all sorts of stalls set up everywhere without any sort of order to speak of. All sorts of shouts, quarrels, and curses could be heard. Lu Ping was not surprised. As he walked slowly, he lowered his head to look at the various items placed on the ground. At the same time, he inadvertently glanced behind him, the corners of his lips curling into a sneer. When he passed by a narrow alley, Lu Ping's figure flashed and disappeared into it. A young cultivator hurriedly walked over and also walked into the alley. However, when the cultivator entered the alley and saw that it was empty, he was immediately shocked. "Are you looking for me?" A calm voice rang out from behind the cultivator. The calm voice caused the cultivator to jump and he hastily turned around. Lu Ping looked at this mid-blood condensation realm minor repairs in front of him and felt a sense of déjà vu. On the other hand, the cultivator in front of him was already overjoyed. He bowed and said, "Junior Seng Wu greets Senior." Lu Ping asked in surprise, "Seng Wu? I don't know you. Why are you bowing so respectfully to me?" Seng Wu straightened his body and said excitedly, "Senior might have forgotten, but I am a little shop assistant on Autumn Cloud Island. Senior rewarded me with pills and spirit stones that allowed me to reach my current level of cultivation." It suddenly dawned on Lu Ping. Back then, when he was still a blood condensation realm cultivator and returned to Qiuyun Island from the Monster Sea region, he did hire an early blood refining realm cultivator as a guide. He even gave the cultivator a few bottles of medicinal pellets and spirit stones. But who would have thought that after a few decades, the blood-refining realm cultivator had become a mid-blood condensation realm cultivator with a dignified appearance? Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Those things are nothing. It's fate that we met. It's just a small favor." Seng Wu replied in a serious tone, "To senior, the favor you gave me back then may be as easy as lifting a finger, but to this junior, it is of utmost importance. If it weren't for senior's kindness, this junior would still be a mediocre blood-refining realm cultivator." Lu Ping didn't want to talk about this anymore. He saw that although Seng Wu's cultivation wasn't pure, his foundation was solid and his aura was sharp. It was obvious that he often appeared in dangerous places. Lu Ping asked, "Seng Wu, have you joined a sect?" Seng Wu answered, reporting to senior, "I'm used to living a free and undisciplined life. I'm afraid I won't be noticed by a sect. I've been hunting demonic beasts with a few friends for a living." This time, after Disciple and a few good friends set out to sea, we wanted to sell some of our gains on Universe Island. We never expected to encounter Senior, so we chased after you first with the intention of thanking Senior for helping us all those years ago. I never expected that it would cause Senior to misunderstand. Lu Ping smiled. Seeing Seng Wu's clear eyes, he knew he wasn't lying. Lu Ping said, "Your friends are in the mortal market. I happen to be playing in the mortal market. Let's go see what you've gained." Seng Wu's face lit up and he hurriedly said, "Junior, lead the way." Then, he led the way. Lu Ping looked at Seng Wu's back and smiled non-committally. He then leisurely followed Seng Wu. Chapter 428. Lu Ping followed Seng Wu into the depths of the mortal market. Seng Wu walked hurriedly with a happy expression on his face. Lu Ping followed behind him at a leisurely pace. At the same time, he had the time to browse through the various items on display at his feet. A moment later, Lu Ping's expression changed and he glanced ahead. However, Seng Wu, who was leading the way for Lu Ping, did not notice it at all. He continued to walk forward with a happy expression. Seng Wu did not think that the cultivator who gave him the spirit stones and pills back then was actually a core forging expert. When he and his companions went out to sea this time, they found a cave left behind by a predecessor. In the cave, they had a plentiful harvest, but there were also many miscellaneous items that they did not recognize. His companions were all independent cultivators, so they were not very knowledgeable. They were not sure of the value of these items, and they were afraid of selling them to the shops in the market. They did not dare to show them to high-grade cultivators, afraid that they would be killed and robbed. Just when everyone was at a loss, Seng Wu found Lu Ping, who was buying spirit herbs in the market. Seng Wu had an extremely deep impression of this senior who had helped him all those years ago. Most importantly, Lu Ping did not treat him like other high-grade cultivators. From the spirit stones and pills that Lu Ping had given him, Seng Wu believed that Lu Ping was not a cultivator with evil intentions. Furthermore, as a core forging cultivator, Lu Ping must be very knowledgeable. The things that Seng Wu and his companions had obtained could be shown to this senior. Seng Wu believed that there must be some valuable treasures among the things that he and his companions had found. If this senior valued them, they would definitely be able to obtain a lot of benefits from this senior. Seng Wu knew that this senior was an alchemist. At this moment, there was a sudden noise in front of them. Seng Wu's expression changed. That was where his companions were. Seng Wu looked behind him and saw that Lu Ping had nodded. Seng Wu hurriedly squeezed into the crowd of onlookers. "This is going to be lively. I just don't know what kind of treasure these little fellows obtained to actually provoke the people from the 10 great sects to forcefully buy it." Lu Ping smiled silently, and the aura of a core forging cultivator spread out. The cultivators around him moved aside, opening a path for Lu Ping. The commotion in the front also stopped. Lu Ping walked in and saw Seng Wu, 3 men and 2 women, arguing with a few blood condensation cultivators. Most of the cultivators who were arguing were at the mid and late blood condensation realm. It was clear that they were trying to suppress Zheng Wu's companions. Even though Zheng Wu's companions were trying their best to defend themselves, their faces were flushed red. Their strength was too weak and they were clearly at a disadvantage. Lu Ping looked at the cultivators. From their clothes, they should be from Xianling sect, Shui Yang Pavilion, and Feiyu sect. There were also 2 cultivators who were wearing sect uniforms, but they clearly did not belong to the 10 great sects. However, these people were just small fries. Lu Ping glanced at the onlookers behind them with a hint of ridicule in his eyes. Then, he looked at the miscellaneous items placed in front of Seng Wu's companions. He squatted down and began to look through the items as if there was no one else around. Lu Ping roughly looked through the items in front of him and more or less understood what Seng Wu and his companions were in trouble. Most of these items were useless utensils. Moreover, most of the utensils were made from low-grade spiritual materials. It was obvious that these items came from the same cave abode. In other words, Seng Wu and his companions had discovered a cave abode in the sea. Judging from the utensils, the owner of this cave abode might have been a cultivator with a high cultivation when he was alive. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to use low-grade spiritual herbs to make cups, tables, chairs, and bowls. Just as Lu Ping was looking through the items on the ground, a green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. He reached out and grabbed something that looked like a broken piece of ceramic. However, at that moment, a loud voice shouted, "Where did this blind fool come from? Xianling sect and Feiyu sect will buy all these things." Scram! Lu Ping frowned. He felt a strong gust of wind in front of him. Lu Ping's spiritual sense was very sensitive. Before the blood condensation realm cultivator made his move, he had already noticed something was amiss. He snorted coldly and the cultivator who attacked Lu Ping felt as if a sudden clap of thunder had exploded in his ears. Before the technique he sent towards Lu Ping could reach him, the arcane energy in his body was already thrown into chaos by Lu Ping's cold snort. The technique lost control of itself in midair and collapsed. Just as the cultivator made his move, another cultivator in the crowd followed suit. However, his target wasn't Lu Ping, but the Xianling late blood condensation realm disciple who attacked Lu Ping. This cultivator didn't attack the Xianling sect disciple. Instead, he used a defensive artifact to shield the disciple. This was obviously a last-minute scheme against Lu Ping. The goal was to embarrass Lu Ping in front of everyone. However, Lu Ping had already seen through it. Contrary to what the Xianling sect enlightened master had expected, Lu Ping didn't punish the Xianling sect disciple directly. Instead, he used his spiritual sense to attack the Xianling sect disciple, causing him to bleed from his nose and mouth. The Xianling sect enlightened master who had shielded the Xianling sect disciple with his defensive artifact turned pale. The core forging realm disciple's spatial zone had already been shattered. Even if he survived, he would only be a mortal. At the same time, the enlightened master was shocked. This Xianling mid-core forging realm cultivator's spiritual sense was so powerful that he could destroy a late blood condensation realm cultivator's cultivation base. Lu Ping clapped his hands and stood up. He said, "You've got guts." The North Sea Grand Alliance has a rule that cultivators are not allowed to attack each other on Huanyu Island. Does this Xianling sect disciple think that Huanyu Island belongs to him? Does he think he can attack whoever he wants? Lu Ping looked at the Xianling sect enlightened master who jumped out from the crowd. The enlightened master retracted his defensive artifact and said coldly, "Of course, Huanyu Island doesn't belong to Xianling sect. However, Xianling sect is a part of Huanyu Island. As a core forging realm enlightened master of Zhenling, how dare you kill a low-level cultivator of our sect? What kind of rule does the North Sea Grand Alliance allow you to do that?" Lu Ping laughed, but there was no trace of a smile on his face. He said coldly, "What a joke. I'm a core forging realm cultivator, but I was attacked by a blood condensation realm minor repairs cultivator. If I don't punish him, where will my dignity as a core forging realm cultivator go?" Lu Ping didn't wait for the Xianling sect cultivator to speak and continued, "Speaking of which, I really admire this Xianling blood condensation realm cultivator for having the guts to attack a core forging realm enlightened master. As expected of a disciple of Xianling sect. You're truly bold and skillful. I admire you." As Lu Ping spoke, he cupped his fists at the Xianling sect cultivator who was lying limply on the ground. His words were full of mockery. By now, more and more cultivators had gathered to watch the fight. Many of them laughed out loud when they heard Lu Ping's words. The Xianling sect enlightened master's face flushed red as if blood was about to drip out of his eyes. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Zhenling and Xianling sect were at loggerheads again. Such a situation was not uncommon in the North Sea's cultivation world. However, the strange thing was, where did this Xianling sect disciple get the courage to attack a Zhenling core forging realm cultivator? Not to mention, his mouth was so filthy that even death couldn't wipe out his crimes. However, many of the cultivators who were watching the fight from the sidelines saw through the trick. The Xianling sect's core forging realm enlightened master had activated his defensive artifact the moment the Xianling sect disciple made his move. This was obviously a ploy to humiliate the Zhenling sect disciple. However, the Zhenling enlightened master was already prepared. He used his divine sense to shatter the Xianling sect disciple's heart core, causing Xianling sect to suffer a double loss. This Zhenling enlightened master was really powerful. He could shatter a late blood condensation realm cultivator's heart core with just his divine sense. The surrounding cultivators looked at Lu Ping in amazement, but they all took 2 steps back in unison. The circle around them suddenly doubled in size. Good, good. The Xianling sect disciple's face turned ashen. He pointed at Lu Ping and said, "Sir, do you dare to leave your name? I'll have a friendly match outside Huanyu Island. Please don't hesitate to teach me." He turned to a brown-robed cultivator beside him and said, "Junior brother Shaw, why don't you stand aside and watch for me?" The brown-robed cultivator looked at Lu Ping with an ugly expression. However, he still pulled the Xianling sect disciple to the side and whispered something to him. From time to time, he turned back to look at Lu Ping and Shaw Feiyu. When the Xianling sect disciple returned, he looked at Lu Ping with a dark expression. He didn't mention the friendly match again. He just stood at the side without saying a word, but he didn't leave either. Lu Ping looked at the brown-robed cultivator and knew that he was a perfected master from Feiyu sect. He sneered and didn't say anything. He squatted down again and picked up the broken ceramic shard. Then, he turned to Seng Wu and his companion, who were already scared stiff, and asked, "I want this shard. Do you want spirit stones or medicinal pills in exchange?" The 2 female cultivators who were arguing with the Xianling sect, Feiyu sect, and Shui Yang Pavilion's blood condensation realm disciples were speechless when they heard Lu Ping's question. Their faces were filled with fear. However, Seng Wu reacted quickly and said, "Senior, this is something that my companions and I found while we were exploring overseas. We didn't know what it was at first. If Senior likes it, you can just give me some spirit stones." Lu Ping pondered for a moment and said, "I won't take advantage of you. This ceramic shard should be one of the shards of a spiritual artifact. Although it's broken and doesn't have much value, just this spiritual material alone is worth a lot of spirit stones. Here are 60 mid-grade spirit stones and 6 bottles of blood condensation realm cultivation pills. The 6 of you can split it among yourselves." Seng Wu received the storage bag from Lu Ping with both hands. His face was filled with joy. However, as if he thought of something, his face turned gloomy. His companion behind him was also excited. Obviously, he didn't expect that a piece of ceramic shard could be exchanged for so many cultivation resources. After Seng Wu received the storage bag, he looked at Lu Ping with a pleading expression. Then, he turned around and gathered his companions together. No one knew what they were discussing. Lu Ping saw that Seng Wu was somewhat intelligent, so he wasn't in a hurry and continued to look at the fragments on the ground. Chapter 429. Ha ha. At this moment, a female cultivator with a seductive figure walked out from the crowd. Her beautiful eyes swept over the cultivators present. When she saw Lu Ping, she was stunned for a moment, but she quickly smiled again and said, "So it's the famous water sword immortal. How can I say that senior brother Qiao Weijie of Xianling sect, who has always been known for his fiery temper, is surprisingly quiet this time?" Xianling sect's enlightened master Qiao Weijie snorted coldly. His face flushed red, but he didn't refute. Lu Ping glanced at the female enlightened master coldly and ignored the Shui Yang Pavilion cultivators' provocative words. However, the surrounding cultivators exclaimed in surprise. Nowadays, among the new rising cultivators in the North Sea, the most famous ones were Zhenling Sect's Water Sword Immortal, Lu Shenping, and Xianling Sect's Wind Sword Immortal, Ouyang Wei Jian, who was ranked 19th on the North Sea rookie list. In terms of cultivation, battle records, and true strength, these two were far superior to cultivators of the same level. They had even defeated cultivators with higher cultivation levels than them. If not for their short cultivation time and the fact that they had just advanced to the mid-stage core forging stage, they would have long been ranked in the top 10 of the rookie list. Previously, Xianling Sect's Qiao Weijie didn't recognize Lu Ping. Just as he was about to attack him, a cultivator from the Flying Feather sect stopped him. Only then did he realize that this young cultivator was Zhenling Lu Shenping, who was as famous as his sect's genius sword cultivator, Ouyang Wei Jian. Qiao Weijie knew Ouyang Wei Jian's strength. When Ouyang Wei Jian had just advanced to the mid-stage core forging stage, Qiao Weijie, who was at the 5th stage core forging stage, was easily defeated by Ouyang Wei Jian. Now, the person in front of him was actually someone stronger than junior brother Ouyang. Qiao Weijie might be impulsive and easily angered, but he wasn't a fool. Naturally, he wouldn't cause trouble for Lu Ping. The female cultivator from the Shui Yang Pavilion didn't feel embarrassed when she saw that everyone was ignoring her. Her eyes wandered as if she had thought of something. She said, "I'm Shui Xiu from the Shui Yang Pavilion. Senior brother, there are too many people here. This isn't a good place to discuss things. Why don't we go to the tea house and have some spirit tea? I'll treat. What do you think?" Most of the onlookers were blood refining and blood condensation cultivators from the mortal market. Although they were dissatisfied with enlightened Master Shui Xiu's words, they didn't dare to say anything. They watched as Lu Ping and the others walked towards a tea house outside the mortal market. Seng Wu and the others were the root of this dispute. They didn't dare to say anything. They lowered their heads and followed the few enlightened masters into the tea house. Perhaps it was because Seng Wu said something to his companions, but the 6 of them intentionally or unintentionally followed Lu Ping. Lu Ping didn't mind. He entered the private room of the tea house and sat down on a seat. The owner of the tea house was a perceptive person. When he saw that 6 intermediate core forging cultivators had come in, he knew that they had something important to discuss. Without any instructions, he immediately led them to a secluded tea house. He immediately served the top-grade spirit tea and left with the tea boy. At this time, in the tea house, besides Lu Ping, Qiao Weijie, Shui Xiu, a cultivator from the Flying Feather sect, Seng Wu and the others, there were 2 other core forging cultivators. Obviously, they were also the core forging cultivators who were present just now. Lu Ping and the others just sat quietly in the tea house and enjoyed the tea. No one spoke. Seng Wu and the others stood in the tea house, not knowing what to do. When the 6 core forging enlightened masters had drunk 2/3 of the spirit tea in their hands, enlightened Shui Xiu of the Shui Yang Pavilion smiled and made a few hand signs. A layer of misty water vapor suddenly floated in the tea house. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and found that the tea house was surrounded by a faint layer of almost invisible mist. This layer of mist could block the probing of divine sense and prevent the content of their conversation from being heard by others. Haha, senior brothers, you can say what your plans are now. But before we discuss the important matters, shouldn't you introduce yourselves first? Since this little sister has spoken first, I will throw out a brick to start a jade. This little sister is Shui Xiu, the 4th disciple of enlightened Shui Qingru of the Shui Yang Pavilion. Qiao Weijie of the Xianling sect, the disciple of enlightened Lu Shuheng. Lu Ping was stunned. Lu Ping had seen this enlightened master Lu Shuheng on Frost Island before. He was a very famous late core forging realm cultivator of Xianling sect. He also had hopes of breaking through to the Transcendence realm. Fei Yu sect's Han Fei, the disciple of enlightened master Zhao Wuji. When it was Lu Ping's turn, Lu Ping just said indifferently, "Zhenling Lu Shenping," and no longer said anything. Qiao Weijie sneered and said, "You are very arrogant. You don't even need to introduce your own master. I think Brother Lu will establish his own sect in the future. Lu Ping glanced at Qiao Weijie and smiled faintly, but he didn't say anything. His eyes were full of contempt. Qiao Weijie saw Lu Ping's expression, and the hostility on his body became more and more fierce, but there was also some fear in his eyes. The people in the tea room saw this, but no one said anything. Xianling sect and Zhenling sect had been fighting for a long time. Both sects occupied a special position in the North Sea. When the two sects were fighting, most of the other sects would remain neutral or silent. No one would participate. Qiao Weijie finally restrained the hostility on his body. He just stared at Lu Ping with a pair of eyes that seemed to want to devour him. Lu Ping, however, was very calm. He filled the teacup with the boiling spirit spring water again. When Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that the fight between the two wouldn't escalate, she smiled at the other two core forging realm cultivators and asked, "The two of you are from the Siyu sect? This little sister greets you. May I know how to address you?" The two core forging cultivators who came in with her quickly stood up and returned the greeting. Although the sect they belonged to was also famous in the North Sea, it was obviously not on the same level as the top 10 sects. The mid-stage core forging cultivator answered very politely, "Fairy Shui Xiu is too polite. We are indeed from Yu Hai sect. I am Qian Shu, and this is my junior brother, Yang Sanyang. Greetings, fellow Taoist." Lu Ping and the others also greeted them. Although Yu Hai sect was not a big sect in the North Sea, it was still a sect that was overseen by Fa Xiong Laozu. Lu Ping's arrogance was only directed at Xianling sect. Lu Ping and the others also had to treat cultivators from famous sects in the North Sea like Yu Hai sect politely. Even if they could not rope them in, they must not easily become enemies with them. When Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that everyone already knew each other, she clapped her hands and said, "Since everyone knows each other, it must be fate. Now that there are no outsiders here, we can speak frankly. It seems that these few blood condensation realm cultivators have discovered a cave abode of a predecessor. Moreover, judging from the miscellaneous items here, I'm afraid these few young friends have gained quite a lot." Other than Lu Ping, the other enlightened master's eyes were fixed on Seng Wu and the others. The 6 of them stood in the middle of the tea room, sweating profusely as if they were carrying a heavy burden on their backs. Seng Wu gritted his teeth and said nothing. His expression fluctuated as if he had already guessed the enlightened master's goal. His companions behind him were at a loss. Lu Ping waved his hand, and the cultivators immediately felt relieved. Seng Wu looked gratefully at Lu Ping. Qiao Weijie snorted coldly and said nothing. Everyone also turned to look at Lu Ping. Dao Master Shui Xiu frowned slightly and said, "Senior brother Lu, do you have any objections?" Lu Ping's face was cold and he didn't say anything. Instead, Seng Wu suddenly took out a few items from his interspatial pouch and placed them on the table. He said, "Seniors, these are the treasures we found in the cave dwelling in the ocean. Now, not only can we not use these treasures, but they will also attract the covetous eyes of others. Therefore, we would like to present these treasures to the seniors so that we can make the best use of them." As soon as Seng Wu finished speaking, the expressions of his 5 companions changed. One of them, a female cultivator, shouted, "Big brother Seng, you can't. These are treasures we obtained after risking our lives." Seng Wu decisively said, "All right, I will explain this matter to you later. For now, it's settled." The female cultivator didn't say anything. Her companions also revealed resentful expressions. But they didn't have the courage to refute in front of the Dao Masters. Qiao Weijie proudly glanced at Lu Ping. But he saw that Lu Ping happened to glance at Seng Wu, and his eyes revealed a trace of admiration. Qiao Weijie felt a little strange, but he didn't care about Lu Ping's expression. Instead, he said, "Brother Lu, this is considered as a dog trying to catch a mouse. They may not appreciate it." Lu Ping didn't pay any attention to Qiao Weijie's ridicule. Qiao Weijie had asked for a rebuff, so he awkwardly shut his mouth and didn't speak anymore. Dao Master Shui Xiu saw that Qiao Weijie had suffered a setback. She was afraid that the two of them would fight again. So, she hastily said, "How about this? You all give us your storage magic tools, and we will only take away the things that you found in the senior cultivator's cave mansion that are useful to us. Of course, we won't take advantage of you for free. We will leave enough spirit stones and elixirs for you to use in your cultivation. Seng Wu's face turned pale when he heard this. He knew that these so-called senior cultivators had their eyes on the things left behind in the cave mansion that they had found. He thought that these senior cultivators would more or less let them go after he took out his harvest from the cave mansion. However, at this moment, they had a deeper understanding of the cultivation world. The law of the jungle was admittedly the immortal truth of the cultivation world. However, the true experts in the cultivation world weren't those cultivators with profound cultivation bases, but the great clans and sects. They were the true predators that stood at the highest level of the cultivation world. Lu Ping knitted his brows tightly. He wasn't disgusted by this kind of behavior. In the past, the great clans and sects had been the ones who carried out the most extortion in the cultivation world. For example, the large spirit stone mine on the Frost Island had originally been monopolized by the 10 great sects and schools. Later on, the 10 great sects and schools, which were second only to the 10 great sects and schools, had joined forces. They had only managed to get 30% of the share from the 10 great sects and schools. However, the level of extortion by the great clans and sects and schools was too high. Ordinary cultivators couldn't feel this kind of inequality, and thus couldn't empathize with them. As a matter of fact, what Dao Master Shui Xiu and the others had done was within Lu Ping's expectations. He wouldn't have tried to stop them, as that would have isolated Lu Ping. However, at this moment, Lu Ping felt pity for them. He didn't want these cultivators to die in front of him because they had resisted such humiliation. As expected, as soon as Dao Master Shui Xiu's voice faded away, a male cultivator behind Seng Wu shouted angrily, "You've gone too far. You've gone too far. We'd rather die than submit." Dao Master Shui Xiu's previously smiling face turned frosty. Yang Sanyang, a cultivator at the early stage of the core forging realm from the UC sect, rebuked him angrily. "How dare you? Youngsters, you're courting death." As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to attack and kill the 6 people. However, before Dao Master Yang Sanyang could attack, Seng Wu and the others were suddenly surrounded by a dense blue light. A few miserable shrieks came from within the blue light. When the blue light dissipated, Seng Wu and the others looked at the expressionless Lu Ping in front of them in fright. The other Taoists didn't know what had happened within the blue light. They only saw 6 storage bags in Lu Ping's hands. Lu Ping abruptly opened his palm that was holding the interspatial pouches, and a few sharp sword energies sliced the 6 interspatial pouches in his hand apart. The contents of the interspatial pouches fell to the ground with a clatter. At the side, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's eyes lit up. He reached out to grab one of the black stones. A dense blue light suddenly overflowed from the ground, submerging all the items on the ground. When the blue light spread, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's pupils shrank, but he still grabbed the black stone that was submerged by the blue light without hesitation. However, the surface of his palm was also wrapped in a layer of intense flames like the sun's flames. However, just when the flaming palm came into contact with the blue light, Dao Master Yang Sanyang snorted and withdrew his hand at a speed faster than when he stretched out his hand. Although Seng Wu was imprisoned on the ground by Dao Master Lu Xianping and could not move, his eyes were still there. He clearly saw that when the flaming palm came into contact with the blue light, the flames that were jumping upwards strangely began to jump downwards. It was as if the flames on the palm were attracted downwards by the blue light, and then it was continuously swallowed by the blue light. In just a moment, Dao Master Yang Sanyang's flaming palm was almost only left with the palm, and the flames were completely gone. The blue light on the ground only had a faint layer of ripples. Not only did the light not weaken, but it became even thicker. Dao Master Yang Sanyang's expression was uncertain as he looked at Lu Ping with a trace of fear in his eyes. Another CU sect cultivator, Qian Shu, coughed and said, "Junior brother, you were rash this time." After saying that, he politely cupped his hands at Lu Ping and said, "What is Dao Master Lu's rule?" After Lu Ping made his move, for some reason, Qiao Weijie of the Water Sect and Han Fei of the Soaring Feather Sect all remained silent at the same time. Lu Ping waved his hand, and the few items that had sunk into the blue light, including the black stone that Dao Master Yang Sanyang had tried to snatch, were placed among the items that Seng Wu had handed over. Then, he said, from my initial understanding of this cave abode, these treasures should have come from the same cave abode. The other items on the ground are all blood condensation realm cultivators items, so I believe they are of no interest to you. I will return them to these minor repairs to deal with. Dao Master Yang Sanyang snorted unwillingly, then touched his hand that had almost sunk into the blue light. A faint trace of poison had just been forced out by him, turning into a fine, curling substance. He didn't expect that this person's chi of vigor would actually contain poison. Just this trace of poison had cost him so much effort to force it out, and he had almost embarrassed himself in front of everyone. When everyone saw that Lu Ping had actually returned the scattered items on the ground to Seng Wu and the other 5, they couldn't help but look at each other. Was he going to let them go? It had to be known that this cave abode, Lu Ping and the others could tell that there were precious treasures inside. It was just that these 6 blood condensation realm minor repairs clearly didn't have the ability to excavate it again. After being discovered by everyone, they had no choice but to give up the cave abode that they had obtained. According to everyone's intentions, Seng Wu and the others were obviously going to be killed. If they were allowed to live, news of them going out to search for a cave abode would definitely spread. At that time, the entire city would be in an uproar, and Lu Ping and the others wouldn't be able to reap all the benefits for themselves. Seng Wu and the others had already closed their eyes and waited for death. Now, not only did they come back from the brink of death, they even managed to recover a portion of their cultivation resources. How could they dare to have any more extravagant hopes? Daoist Shui Xiu frowned and said doubtfully, "Senior brother Lu, isn't this a little inappropriate?" Lu Ping didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Seng Wu and the others and asked, "Which of you will be the guide?" Seng Wu clenched his teeth and said, "Senior, this junior is willing to go. But, please let these junior's companions go." Lu Ping didn't say anything. Instead, he suddenly glared at Seng Wu, and the 5 companions behind him lost consciousness at the same time. Lu Ping snapped his fingers, and the pocket-sized man's expression changed. He found that a hole had suddenly appeared in the restriction spell he had set up in the tea room with the snap of Lu Ping's fingers. The sound of the finger snap spread out of the tea room. After a while, a knocking sound came from the tea room's door. Daoist Shui Xiu had no choice but to reopen the restriction spell of the tea room. The door opened, and the boss of the tea room stood at the door. He bowed and said, "What can I do for you, masters?" The boss of the tea room stood outside the door with his eyes drooped. He didn't seem to care about the situation in the tea room. Lu Ping stretched out his hand and threw out a jade token. He then said, "Send these cultivators to Zhenling Huangli Island and hand them over to Master Hu. You only need to give this jade token to Master Hu when the time comes." The boss of the tea room respectfully complied and called a few tea boys to carry the people out. Daoist Shui Xiu rearranged the restriction spell of the tea room in a somewhat displeased manner. She said, "Master Lu, you really don't need to worry. Aren't you afraid that the boss will wake these people up and reveal our whereabouts?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "The boss of the tea room won't do anything stupid in the snowy mist palace." Everyone in the tea room felt a chill in their hearts. The distance from the tea room to the snowy mist palace was 8 to 9 miles. This distance was enough to cover the range of a late-core forging cultivator's divine sense. In other words, Lu Ping's current divine sense was no weaker than a late-core forging cultivator's. Chapter 430. After sending off Seng Wu's 5 companions, everyone's eyes fell on the dozens of objects placed on the ground. Lu Ping didn't stand on ceremony and took the lead to look at all the objects on the ground. Although Qiao Weijie and Dao Master Shui Xiu didn't look too good, neither of them said anything. At this time, after the short contest, everyone in the tea house had undoubtedly recognized Lu Ping's strength. Lu Ping being the first to choose the objects on the ground was a manifestation of this recognition. When Lu Ping returned to his seat, He was already holding 3 objects in his hand. One of them was the black stone that Tao Master Yang Sanyang wanted at the beginning. Seeing that the black stone was picked up by Lu Ping, Tao Master Yang Sanyang's eyes twitched, but he didn't say anything. Lu Ping threw a bottle of medicinal pills to Seng Wu and said, "This bottle of medicinal pills is already useless to me, but it will be quite useful for your future cultivation." At this time, the shackles on Seng Wu's body had been removed by Lu Ping. Seng Wu, who regained control of his body, still stood cautiously in the tea house, not daring to show a trace of emotion on his face. After Lu Ping, Qiao Weijie picked 2 more objects, followed by Dao Master Shui Xiu and Dao Master Qian Shu of Yuhai sect. After Dao Master Han Fei of Soaring Feather sect picked 2 more objects, the remaining 3 objects were just some ordinary top-grade spiritual materials and blood condensation realm medicinal pills. Naturally, Dao Master Yang Sanyang didn't care about these things. He just casually kept the objects on the ground. While everyone was choosing their items, Lu Ping waited quietly on the side. Of the 3 items he had chosen earlier, other than the bottle of medicinal pellets that was specially chosen for Seng Wu, the black stone was called the Crimson Flame Stone. It was a fire attribute heaven and earth unique treasure. Unlike other fire attribute heaven and earth unique treasures that existed in the form of fire seeds, the Crimson Flame Stone itself wasn't a fire seed. However, it had a unique property: it could temporarily enhance the quality of other fire seeds. In fact, Lu Ping knew of several similar methods. For example, he could use wood elemental spirit materials as fuel or use spirit stones to cast spirit explosion art. All of these methods could enhance the fire seed's power. However, these methods only enhanced the fire seed's power and not its grade. But this Crimson Blaze Rock was different. When used in conjunction with the fire seed's power would be enhanced to a whole new level until the Crimson Blaze Rock was completely burned away by the fire seed. Although the mysterious Sky Spirit Burning Fire could also be enhanced by a level with the support of spirit stones, that was only the characteristics of the mysterious Sky Spirit Burning Fire. Without the Scarlet Flame Stone, other fire seeds would not have such a function. Lu Ping played with the Scarlet Flame Stone in his hand and was a little hesitant. If he also put the Scarlet Flame Stone into the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash, the power of the Heaven and Earth Strange Fire in the Thunder calabash would definitely be greatly enhanced, but the number of fire seeds would not increase, and there would still be only 1 Strange Fire. After thinking about it, Lu Ping temporarily put away the Scarlet Flame Stone and did not put it into the 7 Thunder Treasures calabash. The other item was a 2nd grade peak grade spiritual material. It was also a treasure that Lu Ping planned to use to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. After the Golden Scale Sword was upgraded to a spiritual treasure by Lu Ping, the quality of the Golden Scale Sword could no longer be guaranteed to continue increasing the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. If he wanted to carve the 5th or 6th spiritual treasure restriction on the Golden Scale Sword, he would need to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. Previously, when Lu Ping chose a large piece of crystal jade from Tian Shuelaozu's treasury, it was for this purpose. Now, Lu Ping discovered that among the spiritual materials that Seng Wu and the rest found in the cave, there was actually an emerald jade. This was also a 2nd grade spiritual material that could be used to enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword. With these 2 spiritual materials in hand, Lu Ping was confident that he could enhance the quality of the Golden Scale Sword to the point where it could withstand the 5th spiritual treasure restriction. As for the 6th spiritual treasure restriction, it might be a little difficult. After all, Lu Ping knew very little about refining weapons. He needed to ask Chen Lian before he could know. After Reverend Yang Sanyang kept the remaining 3 items, Reverend Shui Xiu smiled and said, "There's no time to lose. It's better for us to hurry to the cave as soon as possible." Everyone knew that they were most afraid of accidents happening in this kind of matter. Therefore, after the group of 7 came out from the tea house, they hurriedly walked out of the Universal Island. Suddenly, a clear bird cry came from the sky above the depths of the sea. Suddenly, a huge black dot appeared on the distant sea surface. The black dot's speed was extremely fast. Just as the bird cry was heard, the black dot had already flown close to them. It was a huge Luan bird. The green and red-colored tail feathers made the Luan bird look majestic. The Luan bird flew to the sky above the sea, and circled back and forth twice. It seemed as if it was confirming something. Then, two human silhouettes suddenly appeared on the back of the Luan bird, and slowly floated down from it. Seng Wu stood behind Lu Ping. Lu Ping used his divine sense to explore the surroundings of the seabed. Then, he casually asked, "Is this the place?" Seng Wu respectfully replied from behind Lu Ping, "Yes, it's here. Last time, we chased after a demonic beast in this place. We happened to find the cave at the bottom of the sea." Lu Ping nodded. He stood on the sea surface and didn't move. The huge Luan bird in the sky suddenly chirped twice. Its body rapidly shrank in the sky. Finally, it turned into a beautiful green and red bird that was more than a foot long. It landed on Lu Ping's shoulder and started to sing. Its clear and melodious cry spread far and wide on the sea surface. The demonic beasts that were cruising in this part of the sea seemed to have received some kind of signal when they heard the little bird's song. Then, they started to avoid it one after another. After a while, a few rays of light appeared in the sky and rushed towards Lu Ping's direction at high speed. After the rays of light descended, Daoist Shui Xiu, Qiao Weijie, and the other 4 people emerged from the rays of light. Everyone looked at the little bird on Lu Ping's shoulder, and their faces revealed a look of amazement. At the same time, they looked at Lu Ping with an even more intense look of dread in their eyes. Daoist Shui Xiu smiled and said, "Senior brother Lu's demon pet is very fast. We can't catch up to it." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything. Instead, he pointed to the sea surface and said, "The cave should be at the bottom of the sea. Since everyone is here, let's get started." Lu Ping's voice had barely faded when his figure suddenly transformed into 2 masses of flowing water. He drilled into the sea along with Seng Wu, and disappeared without a trace. Everyone glanced at each other. They didn't dare to lag behind, and each of them displayed their own methods. Daoist Shui Xiu's figure exploded, and turned into a mass of water mist. Then, he shrunk back into the sea. Qiao Weijie looked at the position where Lu Ping and Daoist Shui Xiu had disappeared into the sea. He sneered twice, and his figure smashed into the sea. A loud sound was heard along with the soaring waves. When the sea surface calmed down, he had already disappeared without a trace. Han Fei, Qian Shu, and Yang Sanyang also displayed their own methods, and went deep into the sea. There was a towering underwater mountain range only 100 feet away from the sea surface. Everyone once again went more than 1,000 feet deep into the sea. Then, they found the entrance to a cave in a hidden location on the mountainside of the underwater mountain range. They waited until they had gone more than 100 feet into the cave. But, they found that the seawater was blocked by a layer of light shield after they had gone more than 100 feet into the cave. Everyone knew that this should be the effect of the cave's formation. Daoist Shui Xiu and the others entered the cave. They found that there was a spacious hall in the cave. It seemed as if the belly of the entire mountain range had been hollowed out. Chapter 431. Looking at the empty hall in the middle of the mountain, it was obvious that the things here had been looted by Seng Wu and his companions. Finally, the important things had been seized from them by Lu Ping and the others. Seng Wu looked around the empty hall. He tried his best to calm down. Moreover, he could tell from the conversation of the few spiritual masters that there must be some secret in this cave mansion that Seng Wu and his companions had yet to discover. However, his eyes were still filled with curiosity. How could these spiritual masters discover something in this empty hall that they hadn't discovered? However, before Seng Wu's wish could be fulfilled, Qiao Weijie looked at Lu Ping. Seng Wu's mind seemed to have received a heavy blow, and his consciousness suddenly became fuzzy. Lu Ping said lightly, "He won't wake up for 5 days." Qiao Weijie sneered, but didn't say anything. Spiritual Master Shui Xiu said with a smile, "Senior brother Lu's divine sense cultivation is amazing. Since it's 5 days, it shouldn't be wrong." Seeing that Seng Wu had fainted on the ground, Daoist Han Fei's footsteps paused, and the entire mountainside shook with a rumbling sound, as if an earthquake was going to happen. The ground a few feet in front of everyone suddenly collapsed, and a pitch-black hole appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, a dense spiritual energy gushed out from the hole. Everyone's face lit up with joy. They walked towards the hole. Lu Ping didn't follow everyone in. Instead, he made a few hand signs. A blue halo overflowed from Lu Ping's palm and wrapped around Seng Wu, who had fainted on the ground. Then, the blue halo gradually faded until it disappeared. Seng Wu also disappeared from the ground. Lu Ping used his divine sense to explore the ground under his feet. Then, he walked towards the hole in the ground with satisfaction. The hole in the ground was a flight of stairs that extended diagonally downward. The walls on both sides of the stairs were inlaid with starlight stones. Although they were dim, they could still illuminate the passageway. When Lu Ping walked down the stairs, what appeared in front of him was an underground building complex that was formed by several palaces. This was the real core of this underground cave mansion. Lu Ping and the others found some of the more complicated remnants of restrictions among some of the miscellaneous items that Seng Wu's companions had taken away. From this, they could infer that there must be another world in this cave mansion. The entire building complex was covered by an array. Moreover, within the array, the buildings, passageways, and gardens were protected by layers of colorful restrictions. Obviously, in order to obtain benefits from this small building complex, Lu Ping and the others not only had to break through the protective array, but they also had to break through various restrictions. However, restrictions were different from array formations. An array formation was like a wall used to protect the cave mansion, while restrictions were like the various traps set up in the buildings and passageways of the cave mansion. When a cave mansion's protective array was broken through, it was just like when a city's city wall was broken through. However, just like the invaders who broke through the city wall would have to face more severe street battles, the foreign cultivators who broke through the protective array would also have to face these complicated and intertwined restrictions. When Lu Ping walked to the front of the protective array, he found that there were already 3 broken holes on the top of the array. At this time, the holes were slowly closing under the operation of the array. Obviously, it was the masterpiece of Qiao Weijie and the others who had arrived here first. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ping understood that these 3 holes should have been opened by Qiao Weijie and Han Fei, Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang, and Reverend Shui Xiu. Lu Ping naturally wouldn't enter through these 3 holes. Needless to say, Lu Ping knew that after these 3 holes were opened, they would be followed by many restrictive spells and traps to prevent the later cultivators from taking the path of retreat of those who entered first. Once Lu Ping entered, he would immediately be discovered by the cultivators who opened the path before him, and would regard Lu Ping as an enemy. Moreover, he would also have to face the restrictive spells and traps and ambushes set up by those cultivators who entered first. In this way, it would instead delay Lu Ping's exploration of this cave mansion. After thinking for a moment, Lu Ping first pulled Dabao out from the golden house that he was carrying on his chest. Then, Dabao's sharp beak and several long whiskers arched against the ground twice. His 2 front paws that were buried under his fat body barely scratched the ground twice. Then, he turned his head and gave 2 squeaks towards Lu Ping. As expected, Lu Ping nodded his head. The ground here had already been sealed by the array. Obviously, it was impossible for Dabao to enter the array by burrowing through the ground. Lu Ping pointed at a spot in the array and a white bolt of lightning descended. The area that was struck by the lightning suddenly froze and gradually cracked. Then, Lu Ping sent out 2 more bolts of lightning in succession and the cracked barrier suddenly shattered. Then, Lu Ping walked into the array with a fat mouse following behind him. After Lu Ping and Dabao entered the array, the cracks in the array that were covered in frost began to glow again. The frost gradually melted and the broken barrier began to slowly recover like the 3 holes from before. After entering the array, the density of the spirit force became even denser. The size of this underground palace wasn't too large and couldn't be compared to the heavy profound cave mansion. However, from the squeaks that came from Dabao, the density of the spirit force here was about the size of 5 or 6 small spirit veins. Dabao scratched the ground a few more times and could only helplessly follow behind Lu Ping. It was clear that even the ground in the array had been sealed. This made Dabao, who had always played the role of the vanguard in Lu Ping's exploration, at a loss what to do. Even though Lu Ping entered the array, there were restrictions everywhere that blocked Lu Ping's divine sense. However, from the roars coming from all directions, it could be seen that the others were already impatiently breaking the array. Just as Lu Ping was about to walk forward, Dabao bit his pants. Lu Ping turned around and followed Dabao 2 steps to the side. A few grey halos formed a spider web-like restriction, blocking Lu Ping's vision. Lu Ping carefully examined the restriction in front of him with his divine sense. At the same time, a blue light flashed in his eyes. A moment later, Lu Ping made a few hand seals and a layer of light suddenly disappeared in front of Lu Ping. However, the other 2 layers were still flashing. Lu Ping thought about it carefully and made a few more hand seals. The second light barrier gradually faded away. Then, Lu Ping made another hand seal that was shrouded in a blue light barrier. Only then did the second light barrier break. However, when it came to the third light curtain, Lu Ping continuously changed several different hand seals, but he could no longer break it. Lu Ping's hand seals were partly guided by Liang Shenfeng, but most of them were figured out by Lu Ping from the mysterious purple jade slip he obtained from Failing Island. Lu Ping had gained a lot from the mysterious restriction techniques he learned in Zhongxian's cave dwelling. Although they were still useful in this cave dwelling, they weren't as handy as they were in Zhongxian's cave dwelling. In desperation, Lu Ping opened his palm and 5 sharp sword chi shot out from his fingers. They circled in the air and stirred towards the third light curtain. Suddenly, the light curtain was shredded into pieces. Lu Ping looked at the things behind the light curtain and felt a little strange. There were a total of 24 pots of different shapes and colors of 7 feet tall coral placed on the ground. Most of these corals were treasures that had been bred in the sea for at least thousands of years. They were condensed from the essence of a variety of spiritual materials. Therefore, they could not be directly used to refine a variety of magic tools. However, in the hands of a tool refiner, a large number of rare spiritual materials could be separated from them and then used to refine magic tools. Moreover, because these corals were old and mature, most of the spiritual materials contained within them had reached the level of top-tier spiritual materials. After being separated, they could be used to refine other top-tier magic tools. After Lu Ping put 22 of these corals into his storage ring, the last 2 corals made Lu Ping happy again. These 2 corals were slightly shorter than the other 22 corals, but the spirit halos contained within them were much denser than the other corals. Lu Ping's eyes shone with green light. After a long time, he happily put these 2 corals into the golden house. The spiritual materials contained within these 2 corals had obviously been affected by the spirit object of the heaven and earth. They had mutated into second-tier top-tier spiritual materials. However, Lu Ping could not find any trace of the spirit object of the heaven and earth in the corals even after using the true pupils of 3 pure ones. After a while, he realized that these corals were obviously found by the owner of the cave. If there was a spirit object of the heaven and earth in these corals, it would have been taken away by the owner of the cave long ago. Lu Ping turned around and continued to walk towards the inner part of the cave. At this time, the rumbling sounds of magic arts resounded in succession from other directions. Judging from the direction of the sound and the hole that was opened outside the magic array, Lu Ping deduced that the most intense rumbling sounds were coming from Qiao Weijie and Han Fei. Judging from the current situation, these 2 were obviously the fastest in their progress. Following closely behind them was Daoist Shui Xiu, not Chen Shu and Yang Sanyang. However, there were very few rumbling sounds coming from Daoist Shui Xiu's direction. Usually, there would only be a few explosive sounds after a period of time. Moreover, compared to the direction where the previous rumbling sounds came from, Daoist Shui Xiu had undoubtedly advanced towards the innermost layer of the cave. It seemed that this Daoist Shui Xiu should be a cultivator proficient in the art of breaking restrictions. Previously, he had been using the art of breaking restrictions to advance. Only when he encountered a restriction that he could not break would he have no choice but to use magic arts to forcibly break it. This was the reason why the interval between the rumbling sounds coming from Daoist Shui Xiu's direction was so long. The slowest ones were Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang from Cu sect. Although their progress was slow, they were very rhythmic in breaking the restrictions. They weren't like Qiao Weijie and Han Fei, who didn't hesitate to use their true essence to bombard the restrictions indiscriminately. Clearly, these two brothers had a tacit understanding with each other. Lu Ping was secretly vigilant. At the same time, he unconsciously sped up the speed of breaking the restrictions. He chased after the others. At the same time, the house of gold on his chest radiated with golden light. Then, 3 8 or 9-year-old boys and a 12 or 13-year-old girl appeared behind Lu Ping. Lu Bai, Lu Hai, and Lu Ling will follow farther to break the restrictions. Qin will be responsible for defending against all kinds of traps and attacks when the restrictions are forcibly broken. As a matter of fact, the Blue Phoenix's explosive attacks were the fastest way to break the restrictions. However, the counterattacks of the restrictions would be more powerful and endless. Therefore, Lu Ping would be tired of dealing with them. Therefore, Lu Ping simply let Samling assist him in breaking the restrictions. Samling's combined strength was above that of the Blue Phoenix, which had already advanced to the second layer of core forging realm. Moreover, although Samling's attacks weren't as violent and grand as the Blue Phoenix's, their might wasn't the slightest bit weaker. Lu Ping could directly break some restrictions by using the restriction breaking technique. If he couldn't, Samling would immediately join forces to assist Lu Ping in breaking the restrictions by force. The counterattacks of the restrictions would be blocked by Lu Qin'er. Dabao would also raise 1 or 2 earth walls from the ground from time to time. However, most of them would be crushed as easily as breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. 1 man and 4 demons advanced together. In a short while, their progress had surpassed Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang of the UC sect. They were approaching Daoist Shui Xiu's progress. Moreover, they were hindered by Dabao from time to time. Under Dabao's strong request, they broke the restrictions on both sides. This had affected Lu Ping's progress. However, Dabao had discovered a few withered spiritual herb gardens among these broken restrictions. He had harvested a lot of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs from them. There were also a dozen 3,000-year-old spiritual herbs that had survived by luck. And, Lu Ping had personally plucked them. The layout of this underground cave mansion was extremely compact. There were 4 lofts distributed around the central palace. Lu Ping was approaching one of them. He was sitting in the direction of the other loft. Qiao Weijie and Han Fei had already broken the restrictions of the loft. The booming sound of magic spells was getting more and more intense. It seemed as if the loft would also collapse under the bombardment. Lu Ping's progress had already caught up with Daoist Shui Xiu. Lu Ping was delighted when he saw the restriction in front of the loft. His hands were like butterflies flying through flowers. He made 42 hand gestures in succession. A loud rumbling sound was heard. The light curtain of the restriction in front of Lu Ping suddenly collapsed backward. Then, a 5-colored door appeared in front of Lu Ping. Dabao didn't wait for Lu Ping to call out to him. He had already rushed into the loft. Lu Ping instructed Samling to guard the door. Then, he and Lu Qin'er followed Dabao into the loft. There were many bookshelves placed against the walls of the loft. Not only were there many paper books, but there were also piles of wooden slips. There were also some jade slips placed on top of them. An ordinary wooden table was placed in the middle of the loft. A teapot and 4 teacups were placed on top of it. One of the teacups was not inverted on the table like the other 3 teacups. Instead, it was placed on the edge of the wooden table where the reclining chair was placed. The tea in the teacup had already dried up. There were only faint tea stains and dust that were about to cover the tea stains. There was an open paper book on the edge of the teacup. It was also covered with dust. It seemed as if the owner of the cave mansion was enjoying tea and reading in this loft at a specific time. Lu Ping saw a thin bulge on the dusty book. His heart stirred. He waved his hand to brush off the dust on the book. A thin jade slip was revealed. Lu Ping was delighted. He hastily used his divine sense to explore the contents of the jade slip. Lu Ping slowly put down the jade slip after some time. Then, he carefully placed it in his storage ring. After that, he started to walk back and forth among the bookshelves in the loft. Dabao dragged a clay pot out of nowhere, and ran towards Lu Ping. Chapter 432. The old man, Qingjian, has been practicing for more than 900 years, and has been in the Dharma stage for more than 200 years. The old man knew that he would not be able to survive the calamity of the mid-Dharma stage, so he had been struggling with his limited training for the past few decades. Now that his lifespan had been exhausted, he had no choice but to face the calamity. If he were to die here, I will pass on the legacy of the old man. Lu Ping understood the above information from a jade scroll that was placed on top of the opened book. Clearly, this was a message that Qingjian Laozu had left behind in a hurry before he had to face the calamity of the mid-Dharma stage. However, after this message, it recorded Qingjian Laozu's techniques, as well as Qingjian Laozu's experiences in training. From the blood condensation stage all the way to the early Dharma stage, Qingjian Laozu had condensed his 900 years of training experience into a jade scroll. He had also tried his best to answer all the questions that might arise at each stage of training. Although Lu Ping could not directly inherit this technique, the experiences in training were extremely important for Lu Ping's future training. Furthermore, this was a set of techniques that could be directly trained to the mid-Dharma stage. Although Qingjian Laozu had only trained to the early Dharma stage, if he brought this set of techniques back to Zhenling, it would be a well-known set of techniques and a strong foundation. The Jade Scroll also gave a simple explanation of the cave-dwelling situation. However, it was different from the cultivation technique inheritance that had been prepared long ago. The introduction to the cave-dwelling itself was extremely brief, and even the first paragraph recorded in the Jade Scroll seemed to have been written in a hurry. Lu Ping couldn't help but suspect that Ancestor Clearstream had been reading and sipping tea in the study when the mid-stage Dharma stage tribulation suddenly descended. Ancestor Clearstream didn't have time to leave any detailed arrangements before he hurriedly went to face the tribulation. In the end, he was annihilated in the tribulation. Lu Ping thought of the pile of debris that Seng Wu and the others had collected in the hall in the middle of the mountain. There were many fragments of treasures that had been destroyed, and there were still remnants of some high-level treasures. Lu Ping could not help but wonder if these fragments, which were obviously treasures, had been destroyed by Qingjian Laozu when he was fighting against the calamity. If that was the case, the place where Qingjian Laozu had gone through the calamity should have been in the hall in the middle of the mountain. Lu Ping followed the general direction that Qingjian Laozu had left in the Jade Scroll and began to look at the books, wooden scrolls, jade scrolls, and other documents that were placed on the shelves around the attic. However, when he walked closer, he realized that the paper books had been corroded by time and had long been reduced to a pile of dust. Some of the threads that connected the wooden scrolls had long been destroyed, and most of the wooden scrolls had also rotted away. Only a small portion of the scrolls could still be seen clearly, and most of them were broken pages. Lu Ping thought about it for a while, then carefully placed all the wooden scrolls that he could see into a jade box for safekeeping, and then placed it in his storage ring. There were dozens of jade scrolls on the bookshelves, which were also the foundation of Qingjian Laozu's cultivation over the years. Lu Ping roughly looked at them. Although the number of jade scrolls was small, the content contained in each one was sufficient. One of the jade scrolls recorded 5 kinds of elixirs for the mid-core forging stage and 3 kinds of elixirs for the late-core forging stage. There were also 2 kinds of elixirs for the half-step to the transcendent stage and 1 for the transcendent stage. This made Lu Ping excited. Now that Lu Ping's cultivation progress had slowed down, he had already collected all kinds of elixir recipes that were suitable for him to take. However, none of the 5 mid-core forging stage elixirs recorded in the Jade Scrolls were currently mastered by Lu Ping. Moreover, the method of alchemy revealed in these elixir recipes was not the same as the usual alchemy style of the North Sea. Obviously, it was not from the North Sea, and the alchemy of the North Sea was of the same origin as the East Sea, so these elixir recipes were obviously not from the East Sea. Of the 2 types of elixirs for the half-step to the transcendent stage, one was used by cultivators who had condensed their golden core, and the other was a type of elixir that helped to break through to the transcendent stage. However, This elixir was more like a secret technique. One was a secret technique that used external force to forcibly raise a 6th-grade golden core cultivator to the transcendent stage. The only elixir for the transcendent stage shocked Lu Ping even more. This elixir recipe was called the minor forging elixir. At the beginning, it stated that this elixir was created based on the peerless elixir of the Fei Ling sect, the spirit forging elixir. Although this elixir did not have the magical effect of directly raising a golden core's rank like the spirit forging elixir, it could help a cultivator achieve the golden core's rank more smoothly by smelting the heaven and earth spirit treasures. Everyone knew that regardless of whether a 9th-layer core forging cultivator refined 1 or 2 low-grade heaven rank spirit items, they would still have a 7th-grade golden core. However, whether it was in terms of foundation or future achievements, the latter was stronger than the former and had a higher chance of success. However, just this minor spirit forging pill required 36 types of 3,000-year-old spirit grasses. The real spirit forging pill required 49 types of extremely precious 3,000-year-old spirit grasses, and it also required a rare item called the Myriad Wonder Nectar. Unfortunately, Lu Ping didn't even know what the Myriad Wonder Nectar was. As for the minor spirit forging pill, it required a spirit liquid called the Vitality Nectar. This spirit liquid itself was refined from some precious spirit grasses, and its effect was equivalent to a 3-year-old longevity pill. The minor forging elixir was created more than 1,000 years after the destruction of the Fei Ling sect. Although Lu Ping did not know when Qingjian Laozu was born and died, he guessed that it was no more than 3,000 years ago. The other jade slips also contained many records that Lu Ping was interested in. For example, there were records about some rare flowers and herbs, methods to identify natural spirit objects, and some people in the Central Plains. Of course, there were also some cultivation methods and secret techniques that Qingjian Laozu had accumulated for nearly 1,000 years. Of course, there were also some information about refining weapons, formations, talismans, puppets, and so on. Although a cultivator might not be able to reach the pinnacle in one of the 100 arts of cultivation in their lifetime, the only person who could cover such a wide range of knowledge and master it so thoroughly was Laozu. This foundation was even more profound than Qingjian Laozu's cultivation methods in the Dharma realm. With this accumulation, as long as Lu Ping spread his descendants, he could easily establish an independent family in the North Sea in a few hundred years. Lu Ping searched around with his divine thoughts, and at the same time, he also used the 3 pure true eyes. After finding nothing new, Lu Ping turned his attention to a clay pot that Dabao had dragged out from a corner. This clay pot did not look special from the surface, but this thin cylindrical small clay pot still contained half a pot of top-grade spiritual tea, which made Lu Ping's eyes light up. Lu Ping pinched a little of the spiritual tea and put it under his nose to sniff it. It turned out to be the famous refreshing tea in the cultivation world. This kind of spiritual tea had great benefits for calming a cultivator's mind, and it was even beneficial for the cultivation of a cultivator's divine sense or divine thoughts. This kind of spiritual tea was extremely rare in the North Sea, almost on the verge of extinction. Only some Dharma adept Laozu who loved tea might have some in his collection. This spiritual tea had not decayed after thousands of years, and it seemed to be the effect of this clay pot. Lu Ping carefully examined this unusually coarse clay pot, and found that this clay pot actually had the same effect as the Infinite Wonder Jade Essence bottle that Lu Ping had seen in the North Sea Palace on Huanyu Island. That was, after thousands of years, the contents stored in the clay pot would not lose their effects. This inconspicuous clay pot was actually a spiritual magic treasure, but using it to store top-grade spiritual tea was overkill. Lu Ping placed the spiritual tea in the clay pot into a jade box, and then put the clay pot into his storage ring. At the same time, he pondered about other uses for the clay pot. After taking away everything that could be taken away, Lu Ping walked out of the attic and continued to walk towards the most central palace of the cave mansion. That should be the most important place in this cave mansion. At this moment, rumbling sounds of magic spells breaking restrictions could be heard coming from other directions. However, the rumbling sounds were only coming from 2 directions. Other than Xiao Weijie and Han Fei's violent method of breaking restrictions, The interval between Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang's rhythmic method of releasing magic spells had suddenly become longer. Moreover, the speed at which these two people were advancing had become much faster. Now, they were already in front of Qiao Weijie and Yang Sanyang. Previously, there had been no sound coming from immortal Shui Xiu's direction. The closer they were to the central palace, the more difficult it was to break the restriction traps set up by Qingjian Laozu. Although Lu Ping guessed that immortal Shui Xiu was proficient in breaking formations and restrictions, it was impossible for him to use magic spells to forcibly break the restrictions. Now that the restrictions had become more complicated, immortal Shui Xiu's journey was smooth sailing. Therefore, the only possibility was that Reverend Shui Xiu had already joined forces with Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang. This was also the reason why the speed of breaking the restrictive spells in the direction of Qian Shu and Yang Sanyang had caught up and surpassed Qiao Weijie and Yang Sanyang. Moreover, the interval between the sounds of magic spells breaking the restrictive spells had also lengthened. Thinking of this, Lu Ping instructed Samling and Xian Luan to pay attention to the counterattack of the restrictions in the surroundings. Then, he wielded the golden scale sword and slashed in the direction of the central palace. When one's swordsmanship was cultivated to an extremely high level, there was a saying, "No matter how many formations you have, I will only slash them with one sword." There was even an exaggerated title, "One sword to break all things." Legend had it that among the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting sect, Peng Laozu had the highest cultivation level, but Laozu had mastered the supreme magical power of one sword to break all things. He had suppressed Hu Laozu and Yuan Laozu, who had the same cultivation level as Laozu, and ranked second among the seventh patriarch of the heaven-splitting sect. Even though Laozu was also proficient in swordsmanship, he could only surpass Jiao Laozu by relying on the seven thunder gem gourd in his hand. Lu Ping's sword slash did not have the elegance of one sword to break all things, but these restriction techniques were also far from reaching the level of thousands of formations. Therefore, within a distance of 200 feet in front of Lu Ping, all the restrictions and traps were completely destroyed by the golden scale sword. However, the subsequent counterattack of the restrictions was also blocked by Samling and Xian Luan. However, these four immortal demon cultivators were thrown into confusion by the joint counterattack of dozens of restrictions. Xian Luan lost a dozen feathers, and Samling was also in an extremely miserable state. Many of the scales on his body were damaged, and dark red blood seeped out. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.